That's right. You're watching me do this in real time, chat. Here we go. I just don't want to have us sit through the whole fucking thing. Hello, everybody. I cursed right off the beginning. Hopefully that doesn't screw our algorithm up. Goddamn. Yeah. What's up, everybody? Hey. So you saw the Line has a podcast. It started yesterday, and Trump's president now, and apparently we're just doing Nazi salutes, and that's a thing. So hope you guys are ready for the next 4 years. It's gonna be a real good time. And I'm sure some very honest callers will be ready to defend the oopsie of it all. So yeah, hey, I'm Arden. Erika, good to see you. What's going on? How are you?
Oh, I'm doing the deal just like everybody else, getting up, going to my little job while the country careens further into a kleptocratic oligarchy, which I am, I've been watching with intense interest and dread, just like everybody else. But wow, I just the accidental Sig Heil is something that, like, it wasn't on my bingo card, and you could have given me 100,000 years, and I don't think it would have ever ended up on any of my bingo cards for the year. That's how out of left field this was. And for those of you out there, maybe we'll get a caller who's going to call in and tell us that they want to argue, they want to defend that he's just throwing his heart out to the audience, which to that I'm like, okay, maybe let's entertain the possibility. Then why didn't he hop on the platform that he owns and tell us that that's what he was doing? Why is the crony's job to come in and defend daddy? I would really like to hear a call pushing back on that.
Yeah, for real. I'm shocked and stunned. We said this in the pre-show, so it's old hat to Erika, but I'll say it to you guys, it's like even if you see the truck coming, barreling down at you, it still hurts when it hits you full force. And I don't know. There's part of me that does get motivated at the same time where I'm like, all right, if we're just going down the shithole, then like game on, I'm ready to fight. But then there's the part where I'm like, oh, but what about all the terrible things that are going to happen? And then I have to I'm somewhere in between there at all times.
Yeah, I feel the same way. It's a constant vacillation, right? Because and with it also, by the way, the incredible ricochet, the whiplash of seeing like the wonderful like stick-to-itiveness and tenacity of people that are already organizing to fight back on all of this stuff and seeing the good in humanity, and then also at the same time being like, but it's also humans who are doing a lot of this stuff. So we're both the best and worst are really out in full force right now, and I'm not really sure what to do with it. My best. That's where I'm at.
Right.
I'm doing my best.
Really feels like a metaphor for human history that we can do such amazing things, and we can also just be so like the absolute worst creatures that could exist.
Too, like, I was thinking about this. I was trying to like put how I felt into words. And my husband and I were sitting around talking just in general about this the other day. I think in the inauguration, like what at some point you got to talk about it, talk about the elephant in the room. And we were both kind of like, when you're growing up and you're reading about history and you're taking history classes, I feel like when I was a kid, right, I'm 29 now. So it's like when I was growing up, like going through elementary and middle and high school, there was this vibe, at least early on, that it was like, we're sort of at the tail end of history where it's like, we're in the good part now, like all that bad stuff happened a long time ago. But where we are now, we're in the good part. And even if it's slow, things are always getting better. And I just feel like I got, slapped with a trout or something on this one, a rug pull, because here we are. And it's, in a lot of ways, 50, 60, 70 years ago. And things are kind of bad again for a whole lot of different people, and not like a little bit bad, like a lot bad.
Yeah.
And that's tough. That's tough to deal with, to look in the face.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's really hard to know what to expect too. I think that's part of the problem, because like you were saying, none of us had the Sig Heil on our bingo card for this year. So that one was like, oh, that's in the cards. Okay, gotta like adjust my model of reality with that. But I mean, like there's part of me that clings on to the hope that like their incompetency will spare us, enough time to hopefully fight back in some way. I mean, like even just like the text of some of the executive orders that were signed, I think left some holes that can be exploited in the judicial system. But, there's also the fear of, do we want to bring this up through the judicial system under Trump when this could make it to the Supreme Court and set terrible precedent that would take generations to fix? But yeah, I was saying this to my friend Nick earlier. Same thing that you were just saying, where I'm like, I really had myself believing for a while that like the next generation of trans people, the next generation of women, we're not going to have to uh, see their bodily autonomy like sacrificed on the altar of patriarchy, and that like it, progress isn't linear, but like you're saying, it's definitely going to be better. And to know that it's probably not even going to be their kids that get to see this fixed is it's rough, but you know, so we go on. I don't have any other choice but to keep carrying the torch forward.
It really is that, right? I mean, and gosh, I mean, I'm also unfortunately very, and I'm sure a lot of you out there same way, right? Like clued into the climate stuff. And this is the kind of thing, like we're talking about permanent damage to the scale that it's like you just said, we're talking about kids, kids, kids. That's how far removed are we, not just from like things being really good and utopian, but just like back to where we were, and stable to the degree of where we were. And that's worst case scenario. But I hate to say this, you guys. I keep being like, I'm gonna expect the worst, so I'll be pleasantly surprised. And then I'm not pleasantly surprised. It keeps meeting or sometimes exceeding my expectations for how bad some of this stuff is. Especially if you care about women's rights, trans rights, climate action, a non-kleptocratic oligarchy as the baseline in the United States. It's not looking great. And I also don't think the price of eggs is going to go down much either.
Definitely not. I mean, I think we were just recovered from like about a bird flu in the beginning of the year, didn't we? So eggs had a little bit of a
Yeah.
ride. Yeah, no, I mean, Bernie released a great video talking about, here are the things I heard, here are the things I didn't hear. And his list of things I didn't hear were all the things he promised on the campaign trail, from the inaugural speech. Like he wasn't talking about addressing housing or grocery costs or anything like that. It was all about, you know, I've been abused by the justice system and the people before me were the worst and they ruined everything. And I'm going to take back Panama and it's going to be the Gulf of America, not the Gulf of Mexico. Like these things that have nothing to do with the average working class American. And yet he has somehow convinced them that this is what's best for them. And it blows my mind. Like we can have a debate on maybe the best economic policies or something. It's always that those things I feel like are more nuanced and it's hard to always necessarily know how the everything will turn out. But like it's indisputable that like the Gulf of America applies to no working class Americans. Like the Panama Canal does not apply to working class Americans. Trans people being recognized in federal documents or not does not apply to 99.9% of working class Americans. It's so baffling to me that he has fooled all of them yet again. And I'm in disbelief, I suppose, because I surround myself with people who are competent, I suppose. I don't know. Like it's a low bar, but
It's some really repulsive theatrics. And unfortunately, theatrics have consequences, right? Like this kind of posturing does not exist in a vacuum. And when attention is being given to this stuff, that's also bad in a lot of ways, in my opinion, right? Obviously, but it's also pulling attention away from the stuff that he promised that would have been, if carried out in a reasonable way, good, like helping working class Americans, a promise that he did make that he is not seemingly doing anything for. And people are just hook, line, and sinker. I have to believe that it's just people are so entrenched in this team sports idea that it's like it's good enough that their guy beat out the evil, demonic bad guys that we don't like because they don't think like us. And he's up there and he's fighting for us. How's he doing that? Doesn't matter. He just is, and
Mhm.
he's pretending to be confident or is confident, maybe doing so, and that's just all that matters. And pissing off the rest of the globe, that's trolling, and that's funny and cool. And it's like I don't know what you do with that. I really don't.
Yeah. I don't know either. It is I mean, uh, I feel it's interesting because right after the election, I was feeling similarly to how I am right now, and similarly kind of like this despondency of just being kind of like, man, I'm really defeated. I don't know what the path forward is. And then I feel like for a while I kind of gained my bearings. I'm like, actually, no, I'm ready. Like we can do this. We can survive this. And yeah, it's just it's the not knowing that is the worst part. Although I will say some people compared his inaugural speech in 2017 to this one, and there were a lot of similarities. And Trump's buffoonery got in his own way a lot. Now I think he's built in a system this time to help overcome his buffoonery, but it's whether
Well,
it'll be enough is the question, I guess.
he's got the entire government now, first of all, and second of all, he stocked the cabinet with two kinds of people. Um, Actual morons who have zero expertise in the area that they've been placed, right? Linda McMahon helming the Board of Education comes to mind, or the Department of Education, excuse me, comes to mind. And then oligarch billionaires with an entire team dedicated to squeezing the most amount of money out of any given situation as possible, who are frighteningly competent at that in particular,
Yeah.
and will abuse their position to ensure that they get that. I mean, oh yeah, you don't have to look further than the TikTok ban to see that in action. It's already happening, right? It's not about protecting Americans. It's not about making the lives of Americans better, which was the bare minimum of the promises. It's
Hmm.
about fattening the pockets of these people by stealing from you,
Yeah,
by stealing
exactly.
from you and me. That's how they're doing it. I don't know. Like in some ways I've been populist pilled by this whole thing because I'm just like,
Same.
holy shit, it's the only way that we're gonna get anywhere is if we band together and keep the few uber rich who already don't pay a cent in taxes, or if we come together and hold them accountable. And I don't know what that looks like just yet. I don't think we have quite gotten our bearings in that sense, but something's got to give. And I'm also so like, I don't know about you, but I'm so disappointed in the majority Democrat response to all of this. It's
Oh
just
yeah.
so weak, and that I don't know.
Absolutely. It seems to me like the majority of people have been viewing the Democrats as just completely pathetic on this. Like I realize that it's controversial to buck tradition, but the notion of them just sitting there behind him and standing when they were supposed to while he is saying like these people are the worst people ever, they've ruined your lives and they attacked me and we're going to rebalance the scales of justice. uh it's despicable. It's like he not only did he win, but he had now has them like on a leash wearing like a dog mask and with a ball gag
Yep.
in their mouth in front of everyone. Like it's
Yep.
yeah, it
It's
is
it's humiliating, right? I mean, have a little shame.
mhm.
Goodness, like I don't know. I've been, I'm obviously happy what I've seen from like Bernie and AOC, but for a very long time, I kind of had like a horseshoe where it was like when I was in college and stuff like that, I was pretty radicalized and like, the Dems suck and like the only good people who are even in government right now are like AOC and Bernie. And then I kind of came through and I was like, there are some other good Democrats. Like I'm fighting for them too. Like we're on the same side. And now I've kind of come back around and I'm like, actually, screw them. Like they're being so passive in the face of like you don't get to sort of take a step back, right? Like you don't get to call Trump, in my opinion, rightfully, um, fascist or call that behavior fascist, and then turn around and act like this.
Yes, yes,
You
exactly.
can't can't recognize the problem like that and then kowtow to this degree, and not lose all the respect, in my opinion, as you should.
Yeah, absolutely. I really hope that I know there's a big race for the DNC chair right now, but I even watched a debate between them all, and I was not impressed with any of their ability to. They just gave the same thing that Harris did throughout her whole campaign, which I think she had a fair enough campaign, but it was very these, very tested, like focus group sort of talking points. Like it was the same exact thing. It was all being filtered through this lens, and nobody who had the guts to just stand up there and authentically from their own like awareness, like talk on these issues and what they're going to do and what they want to provide for. And yeah,
It
it's
feels so artificial, right? Like it feels like
mhm.
I'm begging a Democratic politician who isn't AOC or Bernie or the regular suspects who actually, give a shit about this. I'm begging one of them to talk like a normal person, to feel like a normal person, to connect with us, the people, their constituents, as if we are on level footing. Because guys, they're not better than us, right? Like they represent us. So in that spirit, they should be talking to us one on one as people, face to face. Obviously not literally, but like as fellow people, as fellow Americans, and for those of us who are in the states. But that's not happening, and I think that they took in a very ghoulish way the wrong lesson away from the 2024 election, which is because they're so focused on focus testing these ideas. The lesson that they took away from was, well, I guess Americans are just shittier than we thought, so we'll just move in that direction. Because of course they did, because that's what they
Yeah,
always do. They pick the most centrist feeling, limp dick, if I may, perspective that they possibly can, and they run with that. And then they're surprised when no one's enthusiastic about them.
right. Yeah, I could go on forever. This is a call-in show, so we should probably get to calls.
We should take some
But
calls. We should take some calls.
I'm glad to know that I'm in good company, being sick to
No.
my stomach over how feckless everyone
Hmm.
in power is. Okay. We've got
Yay.
a good amount of full lines. This one is kind of geared just towards you, and I think I love hearing you talk on this topic, so it'll be really interesting. Ashley, she, her in Virginia, is an atheist and wants to know about non-human primates and the extent which they have gender norms and nonconformity and all that stuff. So, Ashley, you are live on the line with Arden and Erika. What's going on?
Hi. So I found you guys like a month ago, and I've been just kind of addicted to your show. So I'm so glad to actually be on here. But yeah. So I've always been very interested in like anthropology, and I took a biological anthropology class in college, and it almost made me switch my major, but I was already too far into my art degree. Um, but I've always kind of wondered this, like, because I know that non-human primates and other species exhibit things like homosexuality or homosexual behaviors, at least. And I'm wondering if, like, I know that they have kind of gender roles. Like I know Erika in the past said I think gibbons have a matriarchal structure, and so I'm wondering, like, is it like studyable or even knowable if like gender things are even like present in non-human primates? Does that make sense?
Oh yeah, absolutely. That's a phenomenal
Mhm,
question. Yeah,
mhm,
so gibbons are really interesting because they're egalitarian. So the males and females
mhm,
actually have like the same level. They're co-dominant. So the two of them,
mhm,
have the same rank. They'll beat each other up. They'll love on each other. Like whatever. It's pretty equal. You're
mhm.
thinking of bonobos, which do have an
Okay.
extremely matriarchal setup. In the sense that the females kind of run the show, and this is fascinating
Mhm,
because it's in the same way that chimpanzees are very patriarchal. So they have an alpha male, and in chimps, in common chimpanzees, not in every population, but in most, the lowest ranking male will still be ranked higher than the highest ranking female. That doesn't mean that
mhm,
females wield no power. It just means in their formal hierarchy, that's how it's set up with how we establish hierarchies like displacement and things like that. Whereas in bonobos, we're looking at the complete opposite. Despite the fact that bonobos are just as sexually dimorphic as chimpanzees are, they wield power collectively. So groups of
mhm,
females will together, united because they have these tight bonds, basically bully the males out of wielding power against them, despite their larger size, which is funny and cool, and a lesson that I hope many of us take to heart. It's that it's like we have power in numbers, and we see this repeatedly in dimorphic primates, even ones that are far more dimorphic than bonobos. Like, so for instance, most baboons or macaques or even mandrills. Mandrills are the most sexually dimorphic primate out there. Males are like 5 times the size of females. So they're huge, and they've got these big dagger-like canine teeth. But females live in large groups, and males are virtually solitary. So the males come in, they're schmoozing, they're trying to get the attention of the females. And in most of these dimorphic primates, and for a reason that will become obvious in a minute, the males don't try to subjugate the females. And the reason is because they can't. Because the females live in close-knit matrilines where you've got moms and grandmas and daughters and nieces and cousins, and all of these guys wield power collectively to the degree that even in this example with mandrills, the most sexually dimorphic primate, Jessica Setchell documented a case where a male come in, he's basically throwing his weight around, he's acting like a jerk, he's a younger male, kind of in his prime, doesn't really understand how to schmooze the females. And it was threatening enough to the young of the females that they mobbed him. And the females live in groups of up to hundreds even. And they killed the shit out of him. I mean, it didn't matter that he was 5 times the size because they were capable of wielding these numbers. And this is why in most of these dimorphic primates, the sex relations, I'll call them, because we'll talk about the gender thing in a minute, are pretty good, because the males know not to piss off the groups of females, and the groups of females like the males because they tend to not be jerks in these setups. And there are examples to the contra, like with hamadryas baboons, but I digress. The gender question is a lot more interesting because humans, obviously, we recognize that sex and gender are different things, and they are, but primates to some degree do exhibit generalizable gender roles, right? Where females have certain behaviors that you can generalize and males have certain behaviors that you can generalize. And the reason I say that generalization there is so important is because ask any primatologist and they will have males and females that completely buck both of those trends. Because it's all they're primates, they're individuals just like we are. So they're going to exhibit tendencies that are not in line with their sex or their gender, if we want to assign them a gender that's related, to their sex, because they can't tell us when those things are malaligned. But I have a couple of cool anecdotes for you that you might find interesting that I think are very interesting. So in vervet monkeys, they're these adorable little monkeys. They have blue genitals, which is kind of cool because they're basically like, look at how fit and desirable I am with my bright blue genitals. They live in all across Africa, and they're adorable. I love them. They're great, and they're horribly mischievous. I've had many things stolen by vervet monkeys when I've been over there. But one of my buddies researched. Yeah, they're little gremlins, right? They're totally little gremlins. But a buddy of mine researched vervet monkeys formerly. That was her study species. And the thing about vervet monkeys is they have this classic cercopithecoid setup where they've got the closely related females, and these groups wield power collectively, and they decide where the group moves and blah, 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 blah. But they do have an alpha male. So they have a male who ranks at the tippy top of the troop. He gets priority on eating. And typically he's not, he doesn't wield that power recklessly, but he maintains that alpha status. And when males come to try to take his spot, they'll fight, right? Because you want to maintain that alpha status. So my buddy was watching this group of vervets, and the alpha male went missing. This isn't super uncommon. These are little monkeys. They are preyed upon by everything on the savannah. But she watched these monkeys, and she watched in shock as the monkey that took the alpha space, the role of the alpha male, not the role of the highest ranking female, but specifically the role of the highest ranking male, was a small female. And she behaved like an alpha male would behave, down to the mounting behaviors, down to the chittering, down to the attacking or displaying at males that might come up and take your position. And so you can watch that happen. You can say that's super unusual for a female, and that's what we say. We say that's an aberrant behavior. But I wonder if that's not just us saying, it's aberrant because we have this group of female behaviors that we say are female and a group of behaviors that we say are male, and whatever deviates from that is aberrant, instead of saying, well, maybe that's just part of the variation of female vervet behavior. Or maybe it isn't, and this female vervet, if you could speak to them, would say that they didn't think that they were a female vervet. I mean, who is to say? We have no idea. because they don't speak to us. We can only observe them and do the best we can. And this has not just been observed in vervets. There's a colony of Japanese macaques who are notoriously very gay, in addition to being having this classic monkey setup where you've got the alpha male, where again a female took the position of the alpha in this community of Japanese macaques. And it was the first time since we've been observing Japanese macaques that this has happened. And the researchers were wondering what was going to happen when breeding season rolled around, because one of the perks of being an alpha is that all the females want to get with you. And so they watched and they waited and they were like, what's going to happen is the breeding season is going to roll around and an alpha is going to come up and take her position as alpha male. Of course, that would happen because, alpha males, or not just alpha males, but males in Japanese macaques are bigger than females. So this was the reasonable hypothesis to propose. But nope, breeding season came and went. And this female went around and just mounted every female that would let her, and all the females
alpha lesbian, I love it.
Yeah, and it just continued, right? And the last time I checked was probably 9 or 10 months ago into this situation. But when I checked this last, she was still hierarchically in that position, which is really cool. And then lastly, I'll tell you that Franz de Waal, who's a classic primatologist, he only died a year or so ago. It was very sad when he did because he was just an absolute giant in the field. He studied chimps and bonobos for his whole life. And one thing that it was really cool about him is that he documented all of this stuff. There was a paper that came out a couple of years ago that documenting homosexuality in primates in particular has been dramatically underreported. And the reason is because they see it as an aberrant behavior. They're like, this isn't normally what we do. So like, what am I going to do with this? So they jot it down, but they never publish on it because it's against the norm. And this study was it was a meta-analysis carried out by somebody. I saw their talk at the ABAs and then they went on to publish it. It was really, really interesting to see that we're sort of coming back from that now. And it turns out, like a lot of primates are gay. That doesn't surprise me at all because a lot of mammals are gay because mammals are super social and they like social connection and they have a lot of variation. So why is this shocking? But anyways, I digress. Almost to the end of my massive monologue here. So Franz de Waal was observing these chimpanzees, and there's a chimpanzee named Donna. And what's really interesting about Donna is that she was a very masculine female. So we have these archetypal male and female traits that we have in dimorphic species, and Donna was like much larger than most of the other females, and she had a sagittal crest that was partly developed, and she had bigger canine teeth than most of the other females, and she had behaviors that were somewhere in between the archetypal male and female behavior. She would puff, she'd piloerect, she'd puff up her fur like the males tend to do and get agitated. Females don't tend to do this as much. But at the same time, she would chill with the females and groom with the females and was great with the kids. So she had this behavior, and de Waal notes this in his book Different, which is specifically a look at sex and gender in other primates. And he tells the story as an example of, for lack of a better term, at risk of anthropomorphizing, a chimp that is non-conforming to the two groups that we tend to bin chimps into.
Non-binary chimp there.
Yeah, and I mean,
gender fluid, maybe.
Whatever, we can't put a label to it because we can't ask them. We don't know whether they even feel that there are gender roles that they're under. We're not sure. Which is why we don't say that that this is a non-binary chimp, or why we don't say that there are trans vervet monkeys or whatever, because we have no idea what's going on in their head, and that would risk anthropomorphizing them. But it's worth noting that this variation exists, and it's worth noting that because the same variation exists in humans too, but we put names to it. So that's the question. I hope that answered your question.
Oh yeah, for sure. Like I put in the thing, like, is this a uniquely human phenomenon, or is this even knowable to begin with? Just because, like, the way that we structure our society allows for these gender roles to emerge in differently in different cultures. Like the Tuatapine in the Polynesian cultures was one that we studied in my anthropology classes as like a sort of not institutionalized, but like a societally recognized third gender that we studied there. But so, and I've always been kind of curious, like, is this something that we can observe in other animals? And if so, like, that kind of puts a dent in the whole, like, oh, transgenderism is unnatural or whatever. And I'm just like, I've been too afraid to Google this question because I don't want to I don't want it to be influenced by people like that who are like, no, this is the way things are. And I'm like, no, I want to ask someone who's like willing to actually engage with the question honestly. And I think that does answer my question. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm so glad to hear that. Yeah, I mean, humans are so ridiculously varied, and we're so diverse across space and time. You know, that's one of our greatest strengths as a critter on the face of the planet. And
I know.
I don't think
So cool.
it's never surprising when we see something that shows up in humans show up in one degree or another in other primates. You know, and with these primates that I gave an example of, like we can't really put a name to it, like. So we can just appreciate it for what it is, which is neat variation. And then when we encounter variation in humans, we should treat that with the same respect, right?
Yeah, of course. Excuse me, I have asthma. Yeah, like
Thank
that.
you,
Yeah,
Ashley.
yeah. Thanks so much. That was awesome, and good luck with the hope you guys are doing okay with the whole like inauguration thing. I heard your monologues with that. Like,
We're getting by.
Yeah.
We're surviving.
Yeah.
We're getting by trying times, but I mean, I'm glad to hear how curious you are on the subject, and best of luck with your continued research on it. It's a fascinating one.
Yeah, thanks so much. Okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Ashley. Bye.
Thank you, Ashley.
I love hearing you get into that because I don't have, I have limited time to dig into that stuff myself, but I've always found like whenever I've seen like other apes doing things in media or whatever, I've always had my whole life that like uncanny valley feeling where I'm like, man, that is like so disturbingly close to feeling human, but still removed in that way that it's just I love it. I love it. In another life.
So freaky. It's so freaky, and it's one of those things, like, I mean, I think it's freaky, but I love it. Like, I think it's so cool too.
Oh yeah.
But I mean, people have recognized that since the dawn of time. Like, people who live in cultures that have monkeys in them, right? They tend to treat monkeys and treat human relationship to the rest of the animal kingdom very differently than a lot of the European or Northern Eurasian nations, where they're like, they don't see monkeys, so humans are clearly super different. And then in these other ones, they're like, nah, bro, this is pretty freaky. Look at their little hands. Look at how they regard you. Look at how they regard one another. I mean, it's weird.
It's the hands. There's like one famous picture of like a chimpanzee reading a newspaper or something like that, and it always makes me like, it triggers something in my brain where I'm like, yeah, man, we are too closely related.
They scroll. Like, have you ever seen them scrolling?
Oh yeah, they scroll. Oh my god, it's crazy. Like, I've also seen them like put on jackets and get into cars in ways where I'm like, man, that is just so natural to you. It is insane.
There's this video you would love. I'm eating freeze-dried Skittles, by the way. I got
Nice.
I don't know what the deal was, but I got like so many freeze-dried Skittles for Christmas. Like, they must be someone's like drop shipping them. But there's this incredible video, and I hate recommending it because I'm very against the idea of like owning primates. Pet primates are a bad idea, especially pet apes are a bad idea. But this video went viral a couple of years ago, and my students love it, and so I always bring it up. This is a casualty, unfortunately, but this orangutan. This guy in Dubai has this orangutan, and this orangutan, she just like lives on his property. She just like hangs out and does human stuff all the time. It's super irresponsible. But watching this orangutan get into a golf cart and drive the golf cart like a person would, she checks her mirrors and she like goes hand over hand when she's turning the wheel. It's the most uncanny thing you've ever seen. She's better than most human drivers I know.
It is so wild. We think so highly of ourselves sometimes, I think, in all of our behaviors, that to see like a lesser ape doing those things, it's like, yeah, it really humbles you to the just how related we are and how much of animals that we as humans are. Okay, so we are going to move on real quick, but I want to remind you guys that we're going to read super chats at the end of these calls. So if you want to send any super chat over $5, we will read that live on air. Do you have Call in Studio up? I don't know if you're looking at these.
Let me pull it up. Actually, I think I was getting ready to at one point, and then I was like, I need to pull up YouTube, and then my volume was on, and so I didn't. Okay, here I am. I am here. Yes, I'm looking at what we got.
Yeah, I just wanted when I'm producing at the same time, I tend to steer, but I want to make sure that you're like feeling included on what's going on here
Oh, of
on
course.
decision making.
I'm down with any of these.
Okay. Yeah, I think I might take number 8 for I'm totally gonna butcher your name. I'm so sorry, but Wessel, he, him, and the Netherlands, maybe it's like Vessel, uh,
Vessel.
disagrees with the title statement. So I always find these calls interesting. Vessel, you are live with Arden and Erika. Help us pronounce your name correctly.
Hey, hello. My name is Vessel. It's like vessel, but with a W. So yeah.
Yep.
Um,
Okay. Cool.
all right.
Yeah, what do you want to talk about?
Yeah, I think the title, the way it's phrased, strikes me as something I would disagree with. So I was hoping to get some clarification from what you think, and maybe I can tell you why I disagree with that. So it says like religion harms women, which to me sounds really, really broad, and it almost sounds like you would almost phrase it like every religion has always, does currently, and will always harm women. Do you think that's fair to read it that way, or would you disagree with that phrasing of it?
I would disagree with that phrasing. Yeah, I mean, like,
Okay.
I think I would also probably even broaden it further to say that religion harms. Like, religion is harmful to humans in general. I would say that, like, I think religion is always harmful in the sense that, like, it's teaching you to accept something that you can't demonstrate, like an unfalsifiable belief, and that could lead to you, maybe normalizing some other problematic beliefs down the line or something. But I mean, I think in particular for women, a lot of the religions that we have are particularly patriarchal and put women down as like second class citizens. So I think there's a particular harm there. It's not to say that there are no women who have good, fulfilled lives without trauma that might, partake in some sort of religious like traditions or anything like that. Obviously, there are women who benefit and love and are happy with religion. I'm just talking more broadly from like sort of an anti-theist perspective, but maybe Erika disagrees.
I mean, I wouldn't call myself an anti-theist. So I'm sort of like the softballer when it comes to religion on all these shows. I call myself an agnostic. People say that doesn't matter. You're actually an atheistic agnostic or whatever. Like, I don't really care what you want to call me. I'm very vocal about what my perspective is on all of this stuff. I'm inherently very skeptical. I like to prioritize science and the empirical. And I'm not convinced that a god or gods exist. So you can call me whatever you will. I'm okay with it. I don't mind. I think that this title is hyperbolic, but I think that it's intentionally so. I think that here on the internet, you almost have to be
Sure.
hyperbolic to get a conversation started. So from my perspective,
Absolutely.
I think that, yeah, so I think from my perspective, I would say that there are, let's be, pedantic about it, right? There are religions that are in and of themselves inherently harmful to women, and almost unilaterally so, that exist today and that have existed in the past. In that way, religion as a whole does harm women. Does it always? No. I think that I could point to religions that have existed that are inherently feminist in nature, right? Especially ones that tend to have a goddess or a creator, a mother god or whatever kind of at the helm. You can point to those and say that those are not harming women. But then, you have to kind of separate it out and say, okay, well, does religion inherently harm people, of which women are a part, right? This is what Arden was getting at earlier. And again, I'm being a pedant here intentionally. And to that, my personal perspective would be, I also think it depends. I think that there is harm in believing in things that you can't support. But at the same time, I recognize that there are people, when you place them on the scale, that believing in something that you can't empirically support gives them some other kind of spiritual fulfillment and helps them in their lives in a way that is almost intangible to me. So I can't necessarily say that it's always harmful. There are people, as Arden alluded to, out there who get enormous benefits and self-worth and community and stuff like that from religion. And I think religion can be good, even though I think a movement towards a secular society at large is better on the whole for us as a species. I recognize the importance of religion, and I would never, push that we should like get rid of it completely whole cloth. I think that's something individuals need to come to, and that our systems need to help allow for. But that's neither here nor there. The long and short of it is hyperbolic, but necessarily so for a call-in show like this. Hope that helps. And I'm going to mute myself because my
Sure.
dogs are barking.
Oh, no worries. Yeah, I think I to the extent that there are religions that have, let's say, rules that harm women, I agree. There are definitely religions that do that. And what I think I would disagree with is the way, like, the phrasing is hyperbolic, of course, but it
Sure.
kind of implies that um, that those religions are going to stay that way. And I think that is an assumption that we shouldn't make. There is good reason to think that religion will slowly adopt the morals of our societies as we go along, because we've seen it do that before. And so, for example, Christianity as well, there are absolutely rules in Christianity right now that are, let's say, restrictive for women. But in the same way that it used to have rules about slavery, which was considered moral at the time, and it was regulating slavery in a way, nowadays, by and large, people say we shouldn't look to the Bible to teach us about slavery because slavery is amoral. And so I could also foresee a future where the Bible no longer provides the moral view on how women should behave or how men should rule over women, because the morality of the society has accepted that that shouldn't be the case. And I do agree that shouldn't be the case. I hope that should be clear. So I think that dismissing religion just because it currently has harmful features is a bit preemptive. Does that make sense?
I get where you're coming from, and yeah, obviously this is hyperbolic, and like Erika said, I think there are plenty of uh religious women and people who I would rather stand next to than many atheists. There's plenty of atheists that I would take any Christian over before them. Um, like for example, the pastor, priest, preacher, I don't know, the woman at the ceremony Trump attended today who went on a long rant about how, there's a lot of LGBTQ people who are fearing for their safety and their future right now. And there's a lot of immigrants who are deeply ingrained in our communities who are very afraid of their future right now. And I hope that you'll respond to them with compassion. Like that's great. And there's like an organization, the New Evangelicals, who are doing a lot of work to try to promote like a very positive, pro queer, pro woman sort of new wave, and even and so sorry, I'm like doubling back. I took notes over things everyone was saying and that I wanted to get to, so I'm trying to like organize this in a way that makes sense. Um, I think that's good, and I think that I would say that I do kind of want to get rid of it whole cloth personally, but I wouldn't want to do so through like force. Like I would want people to be convinced that it's in their best interest to take a more empirical approach to their life and reality. But that said, we're not going to get there, I don't think, anytime soon. It will be many, 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 many generations of humans that are going to die before anything like that even has a chance of happening. And so, of course, I would rather have people like the New Evangelicals or these sorts of things before that. And the last thing I want to say before is I would contest this notion that religions slowly adopt the morals of society. I would say they are regularly an impediment to the progress of society, and they are forced, they are dragged along kicking and screaming by society to higher moral standards. But sure, they are progressing, but I it is regularly against like the wishes of the leadership. They often do this thing where they will be like, okay, we're gonna let trans people be ministers. But then like 2 years later, they're like, actually, no, screw that. That was bad. We banned that. God told me this was all wrong. Big mistake. They do this like I view it far more as an impediment to progress than them slowly getting there. But yeah, those are my thoughts. I acknowledge that religion isn't unilaterally harmful to all individuals, but I don't know. But then there is the angle of it for me that, again, that I think like teaching people to accept unfalsifiable beliefs, I think has pretty dire consequences. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I broadly agree with what you're saying, especially with the part that religion tries not to change. I absolutely agree that it absolutely tries not to, and eventually it is kind of forced to by society at large. Um,
Mhm.
I do think.
I think
Oh yeah,
sorry.
sorry.
No, please. I didn't mean I thought there was a break. I was jumping in, but I want to hear you finish your thought.
Oh, I was going to go on a slight tangent regarding the, let's say, like non-necessity of religion. Um, but if you have something that hooks into the good versus bad thing, that might be more relevant.
I mean, I'll be brief. I was just going to say, I think that there's no doubt, at least in the history here in the United States, which is all, primarily what I know. It's like there's no downplaying the immense amounts of good and bad that religion has done here, right? Like I think people tend to downplay the role of a lot of churches and Christians and Jewish people and Islamic people in general, Muslim people in general, in like the civil rights movement, like marching on Selma, like a ton of, or marching on Birmingham, excuse me, a ton of those people were religious people from the rest of the nation who were like, this is really messed up. The Bible doesn't stand for this, whatever. And like, that's awesome.
Hmm.
That's phenomenal. One thing that I'm a little bit wary of is that even as religions, and the Abrahamic ones are the ones that I'm most familiar with because you're in the West, I think we're all kind of in the same boat with that.
Yeah.
But I'm always a little bit wary because there's some parts of the text that are in and of themselves, being a product of their time, pretty patriarchal, to the degree that that influence is always going to be distillable from the text, right? Like we're
Mhm.
seeing a lot of young Gen Z men here find purpose and empowerment in a very odd version of Christianity that seemingly hasn't existed in the United States for a very long time, if ever. And some of that, at least in what I've seen, unfortunately, I did a big deep dive into some of these types of guys a couple of months ago, and I remember seeing quite a bit on this. It comes back to the garden, right? Like, who's responsible for the position of humans today? It's not Adam, it's Eve. She's the one that damned all of people, essentially, that condemned us all to the life of suffering and sin. And it's funny, in a not haha funny, but in a scary way, to listen to some of these young guys talk about how that story in particular can be used to justify the subjugation of women, because we just can't handle ourselves. We're too licentious and too animalistic compared to them, and we're much less reasonable, and we're victims to our own nature, right? It's like our uteruses just loved that damn apple. We just couldn't help it. And I jest, but it's one of those things
Yeah,
that being intrinsic to the text, that will always be there, and that message can always be pulled by people who are trying to capitalize on that, and
yeah,
wanting to capitalize on that, and that's a risk. That's a risk. That doesn't mean that people shouldn't be allowed to be religious, or that we should whatever make the book not available, or that we need to be
Yeah.
telling people explicitly that's not a text that they should read, or any of that. It's just something that we have to be vigilant on. And I mean this, we as in like progressive religious people and progressives generally alike, because there are always going to be those types of people who use and weaponize people's faith as a means to meet a political end.
yeah. I think I just straight up agree with that. I think you're right. Especially the fundamentalist side of religion can be quite threatening to social structures. So I think that comes with better education, better access to education for people in general. Then you can try and teach people more like scientific ways of thinking about it, because you don't have to be splitting religion from science and say they're opposite. They can never go together. They can absolutely work together. But I
And
agree with you
I
that there is some
yeah,
inherent danger in those texts. Yes.
yeah, I digress. On to you, Arden. Arden was like, oh, I got something to say.
No, it's not that serious. I just like it's interesting because you're talking about how like, oh, some religion, like I don't think religion has ever helped anyone do science. like religious beliefs anyway. Maybe religion, you could say religious structures do, because for a long time, a lot of our universities were like religious institutions. And so to that extent, sure. But I mean, like religious belief, I don't think that's ever helped anyone do science. I think science is like purely secular as far as I can tell. It seems that for some people, religious belief is not an impediment to their ability to do science well. I would absolutely concede that. There are obviously many, many brilliant scientists who have some sort of religious faith. But yeah, I think maybe the way that I'm thinking about it, and maybe this will help clarify because I see there's another caller who has the exact same topic, and maybe this can help them too. When I'm saying it harms, like I think it always harms to some extent, it could be the case that for an individual, there is a net positive, right? Like to the extent that there is still that negative impact, everything else about it and their community and their particular faith is such that it is a net positive on their life. And like I said, I'm not trying to rip, like Erika was saying, I'm not trying to rip Bibles out of anyone's hands. I'm not trying to bring forth the, atheist state religion. I have no interest in anything like that. I want to convince people that like it is in their best interest to try to evaluate claims in like a critical way and to like take things, as rationally as possible, and to not accept things that you can't demonstrate. But
well, and Arden, like to that point, like Christians and presumably evangelistic Jewish people, which I guess exist, or Muslims or whatever, like people whose goal it is to convince that they think that their idea is correct, they'd feel exactly like their position is the same as yours there, and that they're like, oh, I feel that I'm correct on this. That doesn't mean they're trying to keep people from being atheist or agnostic. They want to convince us too. So what we're saying here isn't unprecedented. It's like it's only natural that the position that you take of the world is the one that you want to see as ubiquitous.
The one that you think is the correct one. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, I mean, neither of us are going to sit here and say like, ooh, make it illegal, bust them, send them to the
oh no, of course.
Send them to the Darwinian re-education camps post haste. Like, it's silly.
I think I should clarify one small thing. When I said like religion and science can work together, I didn't mean in a sense that like religion can help science. I meant from a societal perspective, like you can have religion do its own thing and science can do its own thing. They don't need to be fighting each other over the same thing. If that makes sense. That's what I meant when I said they can work together.
I don't think
but
they're
I do agree
inherently conflicting
with the things you've been saying. Absolutely.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I just wanted to validate what you were saying.
But I wonder if you're familiar with there's some research that has been done, anthropologic research that shows that religious communities tend to do better when it comes to dealing with, let's say, natural disasters than secular communities. And also in the same way, they deal better with hardship in general. And I think it's important that we recognize that that is a thing, and there must be a reason for it.
Well, I think the reason is that religion dominates pretty much every society. There are virtually no societies that are dominantly secular. There are some now, like I think some of the, I don't know what you call them, the northeastern European countries that tend to be very secular. But for most of human history, there were like not very many cultures. There were some, but most cultures had some form of dominant religion taking place. I think it's really unremarkable to think that religions are better at dealing with natural disasters because they have been the dominant unifying force in culture for pretty much all of human history. So like, yeah, of course they're going to be better at that. Like secular communities, I think, are equally equipped to reason, our groups. And by the way, tons of atheist organizations, like when I go to like American Atheists, for example, their convention, they do a big like where we put together like food packs or whatever. So there's the atheist organizations are doing the charity stuff. We just don't have the resources or the the scale that most of these religious organizations do. But Erika, you look like you're trying to jump in.
I do, because I've heard this and I've mulled this one over. And I think my problem with this is that it's like we have to be really, really careful that when we're talking about religion and its impact on dealing with crisis, that we're actively and empirically disentangling it from community generally, because
Mhm.
religion does unequivocally it helps build communities, because people have one thing that they all share a belief in, and it involves usually going to a place once a week. That is going to build community, that's going to build solidarity around a singular concept in a way that non-organized secularism, which is an absence of a belief, or a belief in a secular, like, sort of humanitarian cause, right? That if that's lacking, if that organization is lacking, what you have isn't just an absence of religion, but it's an absence of community. So I think the only way to show, and I don't know, maybe this has been done, but I've heard this study before, and this kind of rang in the back of my head when I heard it. What you would need to do is you would need to compare the sense of like the rebounding, the what's the word I'm looking for, the reaction, the recovery, things like that in the face of natural disasters of religious communities versus similarly organized and community-based secular communities. You can't just go religion versus irreligion, because what you're comparing there then is community versus less community. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think I again need to quickly clarify. I wasn't specifically talking about, let's say, at least I think you heard it as if I was saying these religious communities, as in religious structures, are better at dealing with crisis. I didn't mean to say that. I don't even know if that's the case. That, but that would not be what the study that I was referencing was about anyway. But yeah, I think that's a good point against or rather, to tie into that study, what you're making, that if you're trying to compare how well a religious community or sect deals with hardship, you would have to have a similarly tight knit community of secularists to compare it to.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know of any research that has done that, or I don't know if the research that I'm trying to recall did it in that way.
I'm not
So
sure
that would be
such
a
a
fair criticism.
secular organization on that scale really exists. I'm very involved in secular organizations, and yet I still would think they have a fraction of the power that most religious organizations do to address these sorts of things. So I, I not denying at
But
all
I'm not
that,
talking about organization. I'm not talking about organizations. I'm talking about just the small, like, communities. So when I say communities, we're talking about, let's say, a village somewhere.
I do
Yeah, it's
understand
not.
you,
We're not talking about the grand scale.
but
But I also
also
I appreciate your point.
I think that I hear what you're saying. I do think though that still, like, even if you are, say, a part of like a small Methodist church dealing with natural disaster, like, there is the sense of unity in that there is a broader Methodist church that hangs over that one, right? There's like a broader narrative that's connecting you to like the humanity at large, that helps you like motivate large groups of people to do these sorts of things. Like, I think that is, one of the strengths that humans had like in our evolutionary
Sure.
history. But I mean, I would love to see the research because I haven't seen it, and you may be citing it completely fairly. I may be totally off base. So, like, don't take away from this that I'm just like totally flat shutting you down because I haven't read what you've read. But I would be very, very skeptical
Sure.
of the ability to compare those kinds of things efficiently, just because I just don't really see secular, like, even small scale community groups really doing the same kinds of things, or even having the resources or capacity to do the same sorts of things. But I
I
Mhm.
may be
think
wrong.
too, you might even, like, the point would maybe even stand too from your perspective, Wessel, if you could show that that religion itself is better than secular organizations at creating community, and then those communities are more robust. Like, I don't think you could disentangle religion from, a religious community that's tight knit necessarily from a secular community that's tight knit, at least not easily. But I think that would be the way to do it, is you would want to try to show that, if you have two communities all else being equal, one of them is rooted around a secular cause, one of them is rooted around a religious cause. Which one fares better in the face of disaster? Is it something about religiosity inherently as a unifying cause that makes it better at fortifying communities against disasters that of any kind, of any variety, pandemics, disasters, whatever? That would be the study that you need to do. But to Arden's point, yeah, I don't know how you would do this, because even if you could find like a little, like let's say you went to Norway and you found a tiny atheist village, and they were unified around the cause of humanitarian effort or humanism or whatever, you still wouldn't be able to do a one-to-one necessarily because of the size difference. It might have something to do not with the fact that they're atheistic, but that they're smaller and thus can be more tight-knit as compared to a large. So there are a lot of variables that you would have to account for, I think, to confidently say one thing over another makes a community more fortified. I think what you can say from the study that you cited for sure is that tighter knit communities do better in the faces of crises.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think this is definitely like the kind of research that requires a lot of inference from whoever is looking into it, because you're looking at it from the outside, and also B, there's a lot of variation, like you're saying. I could find the study if you want, but I didn't want to like just start citing DOI.org things, because it doesn't
Sure.
seem like the best use of our time, right? But I could definitely do it if you really wanted to.
I mean, I'd be curious just as a matter of just reading it. I like being informed on data like that. I think that always helps me have a better perspective. But yeah, I know, I completely understand. We don't have to dig into it for the purposes of
Sure.
a call. The format
I could
doesn't really allow for
post
that.
it in the chat later or something like that, if that's fine. Something like that
Sure.
might be the best way.
I feel
But I
like
think on the
Drew,
yeah.
Genetically Modified Skeptic, he's a YouTuber. I feel like he's talked a lot about this, but maybe I'm misremembering. I know there are a couple of YouTubers who have looked at the influence of religion on community, but maybe I'm misremembering. Someone in chat tell me.
I think,
Atheists love to
I
cite
think
the atheist tip better thing. Like there's like one study that shows like atheists are slightly more generous on like an individual level, but yeah, it's another thing that I'm like, I don't think you could in the reverse draw like really meaningful conclusions from that. Like atheists in the US tend to be more left-leaning and progressive in their politics, but like we're not really organized in a meaningful way. So yeah.
Yeah. No, it's funny you mentioned Drew, because I think he did mention the paper that I'm referring. He did mention it in one of his videos, I think about June, because June is also a commentary on religion in a way. So he cited the paper that I'm also familiar with, and that was an interesting parallel, I suppose. But I don't want to take up like too much of this time. Like I feel like the conversation has been great. I think we broadly agree. I think we disagree on some points, but we broadly agree. I think it's pretty cool.
No, yeah, I appreciate the conversation. I know I do tend to put, as Erika pointed out, YouTube really kind of requires a little bit of hyperbole to have the algorithm catch our interest. And so, of course, I will I can even just be straight with you. What we found on our lives is the types of titles that perform well, where we actually get engagement and calls, even just during the live, are ones where I make a hard claim and say disagree, question mark, or where I say like theists versus atheists, who will win? Like that kind of thing. So this is just also the nature of YouTube for sure. But I mean, like I try my hardest to keep the hyperbole within the bounds of something that I would defend on a call in the live and show like this for sure. But yeah, I do appreciate testing our ability to defend the hyperbole. So thanks for calling in, Vessel. I appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thank you. This was really great.
Have a nice night. Vessel. Bye. All right. I did close the lives.
I know that struggle hard, right? Like I've tried it. I create a really nice SEO optimized. Today we'll be discussing the contemporaneity of Paranthropus and Homo at Kubifora, and it's just like, 5 people watch it. Most of them only watch it because they already follow me. And then it's like you say something like super hyperbolic, like paleontologists discover this. you won't believe what happened next. And it's like the
Right.
thumbnail is like it's like a shock prominent. And
Oh
you know, if
yeah.
that's what it takes to get people's attention and then trick them into learning, then so be
And
it.
I think there's a validity like in what you just said to sort of the clickbait strategy, which is that like kind of using people's prejudices and assumptions to hook them in, and then like actually delivering like on an educational level like something that can help inform them better. So
Right.
yeah, I
Right.
mean it's, but I realize it does often, we do often have callers calling in to be like, I have problems with this title, and me having to be like, okay, I get it, but also
Or they comment and they're like, this is clearly clickbait. And you're like, yes, it
yes.
is. You're right.
Do you want my YouTube videos to reach your feed? Because if you do,
It's like your first time logging onto the internet ever. We don't log on to the internet. Coming onto the internet ever, like I don't.
yeah,
I get
no,
it,
for
but
sure.
cut us some slack.
All right. So actually I should probably read you guys the schedule before we take our next call. I did close the line, so no new callers will be allowed in, but if you are currently in the host queue, you've spoken to our screener, we will get to you. Or do you have any hard cutoff times tonight, Erika?
Nope.
I know usually
Okay.
Promise and Alyssa tend to go like 90 minutes, but I'm too verbose for that. So, okay.
Yeah, you
So,
won't find any problems from me.
right. Okay. So coming up this week, tomorrow night on the Hang Up is going to be Matt Dillahunty and Jim Barrows. We got better connections, so we won't have hopefully what happened last time there. We'll actually get to see him. It's good. I haven't seen Jim in a while, so it'll be fun. I don't have a guest planned for TACIS this Thursday yet because none of my normal hosts are available, and I don't have Twitter, which was like my main way of fielding guests. So I'm gonna figure it out, y'all. Send recommendations if you have any. On the early show this Sunday is gonna be I almost read last week's, but it's gonna be Matt Dillahunty and John Gleason. The late show will be Forrest Valkai and Seth Andrews, and then Aaron Adair is gonna be hosting Skeptalk next week at 6 p.m. Central Time, and Alyssa and Eve promise we'll be back here again next week. So, long breath. All right, we have a bunch of callers. They all seem pretty interested. How do you feel about Sean? I think that might mean, it's supposed to mean polyamorous? Polyandrous.
It's possible they mean polyandrous. I'm cool with that. I mean, I
Okay.
can talk about that for sure.
I'm curious to find out. So Sean, pronouns they, them in Arizona, is an atheist who asks, were humans originally polyandrous, I suppose? So, Sean, you are live on the line with Arden and Erika. Tell us, is it polyandrous or polyamorous? I'm so curious. Either way.
Yeah, it's polyandrous.
Okay.
It's one woman, many guys. And
It's
it's
the
pretty much
strategy.
pretty much been reading Sex at Dawn, and it argues that prehistoric humans, were not technically monogamous, not technically polyandrous, just like one woman had multiple sex partners, and that's pretty much evolved with us until the dawn of agriculture. And that's pretty much what I'm arguing.
So, this is actually right up my research alley, believe it or not, like IRL in academia research alley. So I study the correlates between physical characteristics of primates and their behavior. And usually the behavior that I'm looking at is mating system or social system or competition levels. And this makes sense because if you got big weapons in your mouth, like big canine teeth, or you've got a big body or whatever, your competition level is probably high, which means you're competing a lot for either resources or mates. And sexual dimorphism, the difference between males and females of a given species, is pretty closely related in living primates to the type of mating system that they have. In really dimorphic species, male competition is high, so females will either mate with a ton of males for paternity confusion, or one male will try to monopolize a smaller group of females, and they'll hang out with him in exchange for keeping, other males that might kill their kids out of the way, or help defending resources or whatever. And they, as I was mentioning earlier, will collectively wield their power to either let him stay or boot him in those polygynous communities. Now, polyandry is actually the rarest type of mating system in primates, but it does exist. Polyandry being a single female with multiple males, and it's pretty restricted to callitrichins, so tamarins, marmosets, these little cuties that live in South America and Central America. They're adorable. And one female will have multiple male partners, and part of the reason why it evolved in that particular group is for a surprising but really interesting reason. Especially in tamarins, they twin. So they're one of the only primates that naturally twins all the time. The female will have 2 babies, and they are both enormous. So it is absolutely exhausting for her to give birth to these babies. And that's why 2 males stick around. She'll mate with 2 or more males, so the paternity is confused. Neither male knows whether or not he's the dad. Then she has 2 kids. She's exhausted. And because all the dads aren't sure if the kids are his or not, they take care of her every whim. They fetch her food, they watch the kids, and all she has to worry about is lactating and keeping these kids alive. Now, one point in favor of what you're arguing for polyandry in humans is, well, actually 2 points. One, some humans are polyandrous at the individual level and culturally speaking. And 2, polyandrous species tend to be sexually monomorphic, at least in skeletal dimensions, which humans are in skeletal dimensions not very dimorphic. A non-expert cannot pick up a skull and tell you if it belongs to a male or a female or somebody in between. It's not something that they can do. So those are both kind of in your favor, but unfortunately, polyandry is, one, really difficult to parse from pair bonding or monogamy, which is also has both of those characteristics, being found in living primates, and then also involving monomorphism. But also, polyandry just requires these really unique conditions to show up wherever and whenever it shows up in mammals in particular. And we don't have any indication that those conditions, twinning or an extraordinarily difficult birth that requires being weighted on hand and foot by multiple different males, we don't have any inkling that that was present in human societies or in hominin societies. Certainly, pair bonding was present in earlier hominins, and certainly multi-male, multi-female, so a big promiscuous free-for-all where everybody's, banging everybody, that was present at points, and certainly polygyny was present, but polyandry, we just don't have any indication. Does that mean it wasn't? No. Does that mean it didn't characterize some populations? No. It just means that we can't, with any certainty, point to any given hominin, or hominoid even, and say that thing was definitely polyandrous. Does that make sense?
Yeah, just like the book Sex and Dawn just argues for promiscuous females, sperm competition, just like societies, small knit groups of societies under 150 people, they kind of just they had to share their resources. They had to be generous and giving, and
yeah, now that totally. I'm a big believer in egalitarianism characterizing a lot of hominin groups and a lot of early human groups, in part because they were in these small sizes, and it's really difficult when you're a hunter-gatherer to pool resources and then use that to wield power over others. It's just, you can't do it as easily. So egalitarianism tends to characterize hunter-gatherers today. Now, were females like super promiscuous in early human societies? Yeah, and males probably were too. And everybody in between was as well, because that was just the nature of the beast. Now, people probably still pair bonded because we love to pair bond. We love to be at least socially monogamous because we like to have our person. Some people buck the trend and they can do polyamory like a pro. That's human diversity for you. But most people, they pick one person and they're like, we're going to be a unified team together. And that's how it tends to be structured. And then there are multiple of those within a larger group of people. But then humans are also serial cheaters. So at the same time, at a secondary level there, you've also got a lot of promiscuity on the part of everybody. So there's this really interesting social and sexual intersection in human groups, both in the past and today. But as far as like a polyandrous only society where one female mates with a bunch of different males and then they're a single unit together, maybe we see there are human societies today where they do like brother marriages or whatever. I think it's in Tibet, where it's like one woman marries a guy and then she also just gets all his brothers. Now, to me, that sounds exhausting, but maybe they make it work. So it's like it does happen. It's just it's uncommon. You know what I mean? So I hope that answered your question.
I know there's some societies today, the Mormons, they kind of do it differently, so they practice.
They invert it. Polygyny.
Yeah. Yeah, but that's why I've been reading is Sex at Dawn by Christopher Ryan and Cecilda Jeffa, and it just argues that like small societies, and then like pre-agricultural societies, they weren't typically polyandrous. They were typically like men didn't fight like in person for a mate. They just had a really healthy sperm, and they just let their sperm battle it and
do the fighting.
Healthy sperm is the worst phrase I've ever heard in my entire life. Sounds so gross.
You would be horrified to learn about the studies behind how sperm competition is established in animals, because there is a lot of collection, and I don't know how they do it, but they do it. They do it, and they analyze it. So,
I mean, I breed snakes, so I'm familiar with how disgusting animals can be, but yeah, just the phrase "healthy sperm" is now going to be imprinted in my brain for the rest of the night. So thank you, Sean. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Sean.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right, you have a good night. I appreciate you calling in. Thank you. Okay.
All right, what are you thinking?
Let's see. We got some theists in, we got 2 theists in, so I would like to get to them, because we've been doing all atheists so far. What do you think between the 2?
I think, I mean, you know that 19, that I've got that. The question is, how long could that go back and forth, So I think that we do 17 first.
Okay. Yeah, I know the caller on line 19, and that will definitely go back and forth for a while. So we're going to talk to, I believe it's Saus in Turkey, pronouns he, him, says that Islam is a revelation from God. So, Saus, you are live on Chewed Gum with Arden and Erika. I almost said transatlantic. How are you doing? Are you there?
Saus, can you hear us?
You're using the web client. You got to pull your phone away, tap it to wake it up. If the browser goes to sleep, goes dark, then it'll shut off the audio. That was going once. That was going twice. All right, I'm going to put you back in the queue for now. We might try you after this next caller, but I guess we're going to jump right into it. So, return caller, favorite of the chat, Steve from Nebraska is a theist who's talking about the Y chromosome bottleneck. Steve, you are live.
Hi, Arden and Erika. Thanks for having me on the line. And I was calling to discuss, to explain why the Y chromosome bottleneck had occurred. Is that something you're familiar with? Probably Erika probably knows about the Neolithic Y chromosome bottleneck.
Oh, yes. By all means.
Okay. So, this is where there was a significant decline in the genetic diversity of the Y chromosome, suggesting a sharp decline in the reproductive males in the overall population. And scientists couldn't explain, why was there this decline in reproductive males to where there were something like 10 females to every male, and this bottleneck occurred within the time frame of the biblical flood about 4,800 years ago. So I have an explanation. I just wanted to hear what you thought of it. So I think this happened when males killed each other off, combating over scarce resources after the Great Flood, survived by Noah and a few others. And I just wanted to know if maybe you had an alternate explanation, or if you like my explanation.
Yeah, so I'm a conventional scientist, so I think that there is exactly zero support for a global flood from a geologic perspective, from a perspective of physics, from a perspective of chemistry, from a perspective of biology, and I also accept the science of evolutionary theory being responsible for all modern biodiversity, including humans, given we are both mammals, primates, apes, hominoid apes, and hominid apes, etc. So yes, I do have an alternative answer for your Y chromosomal bottleneck. So the first and foremost is that there are bottlenecks several times in human history, and the Y chromosome is not the only one. And the one that you're referencing, the Neolithic, is also not the only Y chromosomal bottleneck. We have other bottlenecks that have occurred for the mitochondrial DNA. We have ones for the nuclear DNA, and they are all at different times, at different periods during the past. Now, bottlenecks do not necessarily have to be caused by a natural disaster. The bottleneck effect is one branch of the founder effect. It's a type of the founder effect, but the other, or of the founder effect, of genetic drift, excuse me, but the other type is the founder effect. You can get the same exact signal from a big disaster that kills off a lot of individuals as you can from a single small population splitting off from a larger one and establishing itself somewhere else. So what you're describing there, one, I don't think that it's feasible to propose the Great Flood for anything because I don't think it happened. But two, I don't even think that it's feasible to propose a large-scale disaster as being responsible for the Y chromosomal bottleneck in humans because other things can cause Y chromosomal bottlenecks. And to make my case for both, I gesture broadly at other bottlenecks, as I said earlier, in the mitochondrial DNA and the nuclear DNA, as well as the Y chromosomal DNA at different times that have occurred at alternative points in the history of humans and apes and mammals throughout history.
Okay, so what do you think caused this this Y chromosome bottleneck 5,000 years ago? What would your explanation be?
I think it was probably a founder effect event because it's not present in all humans.
Okay, so this doesn't prove in any way a great flood. And by great flood, I don't mean global, like killing everybody off. I'm just talking something that was really significant that killed off most everything.
Steve, even if you could show that, how would having a bottleneck of genetic diversity in any way demonstrate a large-scale flood?
Well, it would show that there were few people in the population. That it wouldn't necessarily show a great flood. Like for example, you have the highest elevated trees that are 4,800 years or over, and you don't have any trees that are 4,800 plus years on lower elevations because those were all flooded out. So that would demonstrate a mile-high flood. But this wouldn't necessarily prove the extent of a flood. This would just show that the effect on the population, limited population after the flood.
So I don't believe that there's evidence for a flood a mile high anywhere on the planet ever that we have support for. We do have evidence for marine transgressions, for the rise and decline of the sea level over vast periods of time. And we do have evidence for very, very large, very, very brief floods like those of the Scablands. But we do not have any evidence that a large-scale flood, global or just the biggest local flood you've ever seen, as sort of described in Genesis, that something like that occurred. Now, does it mean that there was never a local flood that was enormous? No, I suspect there probably were many very large local floods, probably none like the ones described in Genesis, and certainly not within human history that we've been able to clock. But your problem from a population perspective is one of population genetics. It's an issue where that bottleneck, if the bottleneck you're describing was the result of a local flood, that signal would be ubiquitously present, not just in the Y chromosome, but in the mitochondrial DNA and in the nuclear DNA and in everyone. You get what I'm saying?
Right. Yeah. This wouldn't just be from some little flood. This would be a really, really powerful flood that would have wiped out.
Or it could be any other really powerful large-scale event. Like, I don't know how you could possibly get to a flood. It could be, right? Like, it would be, for what you're trying to draw, it could be so many different types of natural disasters that would be possible.
Well, and there's the issue that there's no evidence for that, right? Like I could say that the reason the dinosaurs all went extinct 65 million years ago was because of a giant flood. There is no evidence that a giant flood occurred 65 million years ago, and there is evidence that a massive asteroid the size of Mount Everest, going the speed of a bullet, slammed into the surface of the Yucatan Peninsula at the same time massive volcanism was wreaking havoc on the subcontinent of India, right? Like this kind of thing has to be rigorously tested and cross-checked and corroborated against other signals, none of which you have for a global flood, right? Like you're just saying, hey, there's a Y chromosomal bottleneck. Maybe it was a global flood. That's a fine hypothesis, but then you have to test it. You have to look at the data. You have to say, okay, do all of these other genetic signals match that? They don't. We have them. Do we have evidence for a flood of that size anywhere relevant or at all? No, we don't. Not at present. You have to go through these one by one and test them. I'm a firm believer that none of that means that you can't be a Christian or that that religion is wrong or whatever. I hold that opinion, but for different reasons. But it does mean that the flood of Noah, as it's described, or anything close to as it's described, doesn't look like it happened from a scientific perspective.
What about all those 4,800-year-old craters that they've found in that great comet that hit the Indian Ocean and all these other, the Henbury comets in Australia and the Ramgar crater of India, the Red Sea Hills craters in Sudan? What about the Mohas crater? All these 4,800-year-old comets. There was a huge comet strike on the Earth 4,800 years ago.
Steve, before we get into the science of this, because Eric is going to know so much more on this than I am, I'm hesitant to even indulge going down this path for the reason that you are doing like inverse science right now. You are starting with the conclusion of a flood happened and asking us to like disprove every candidate theory, but you haven't actually like demonstrated evidence that would lead us to even hypothesize that a flood is reasonable to then start considering candidate theories. So like, I'm hesitant to indulge you on like exploring every single potential thing that could maybe explain something close to what a flood might look like. I think it would be better for you to actually present the evidence for a flood rather than asking us to disprove a bunch of things.
Okay.
Okay. Does that mean you're gonna? Okay.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for taking my call and your time, and I really enjoy hearing your shows, and thank you, Eric. I like your expertise. You're very knowledgeable.
Thank you, Steve. Listen, anytime you want to call back and draw together every evidence you have for a flood 4,800 years ago of massive size, call back. I would be happy to go through it piece by piece with you.
Call back on an Erika and Forrest day where we're like intending to go 9
Forrest
hours.
Won't take my, Mr. Mayor won't take my calls anymore.
Oh,
so I can't call when he's on. I'll have to call
sorry,
when,
you might make an exception for
when Dr. Adair is on, probably. So,
if I'm there,
okay,
Steve, I might be able to convince him for you if I'm present. I'll see.
Oh yeah, thank you for putting a good word in. I appreciate you.
My pleasure. Take care.
Thanks, Steve.
Hey, yeah, you too. Thanks. Bye.
Oh, I didn't mean to disrupt if you wanted to handle that. And I honestly was expecting him to be like, okay, let me present something. He just was like, oh, okay, I'm going to go away and do that. And I'm like, oh, okay. That was not the answer I was expecting.
It was honestly a breath of fresh air. I mean, I would much rather if someone wants to make a case for that, say, okay, I'm going to go gather it, because you can't do that like right here live on air. So go and do that and then come back when you have it. I mean, I prefer that, but yeah, I'll try to goad Forrest into it, but he might just shut me down.
Right. Yeah. I mean, so Steve called this Sunday on the After Dark episode, I believe, talking about the Mile High Tree thing. And I don't know anything about like combating flood geology, apologetics. Like that is so not within my wheelhouse that when you froze, I was like, fuck me. I'm going to have no way of dealing with this like on an empirical level.
When I froze, I was like, absolutely not. I was like refreshing. I was like, I will not be left out of this conversation. But no, I mean, it is my curse. It is my sword of Damocles that I am absolutely condemned to give a shit about this particular topic forever and ever and ever. So I got you on that for sure.
I mean, I appreciate it. Somebody has to do it. And and there's a world where I appreciate that Steve tends to accept the answers. But my problem with Steve is that he'll accept the answers we give him live on air, and then we'll call back 2 days later as if that conversation never happened. And so it's a little frustrating to know if we're reaching him or if there's any progress or if there's any understanding going on, because I'm not really interested in having fruitless conversations. Like, I don't want to make someone into a lolcow just for content. If somebody is ridiculous, but there is a conversation there, I'm happy to take advantage of that. But like, it's hard for me.
It almost makes me wonder if there's, you usually, not always, but in my anecdotal experience, when you encounter creationists of Steve's variety, usually there's somebody in their life and they're ping-ponging back and forth between you and them.
Yeah.
They're basically talking to you, getting all your talking points, coming back, and then you're basically having an argument through that person with someone you've never met.
I think you're completely right in Steve's case, because this happened during the election. He called in and like was initially not going to vote, then he was going to vote and for Kamala Harris, then he wasn't going to vote and he was going to vote for Jill Stein, and then he was going to vote for Kamala Harris, then it was back to Jill. I think that's exactly what was happening. Is I got that impression that we were having a proxy argument. I mean, Steve is pleasant and respectful, and I do appreciate that about him in conversation. But yes, it is very irritating to be like, I'm starting with this conclusion, disprove all of my potential pet things. I'm like, that is not how science works at all. I'm not going to do your work for you.
He sounds super inquisitive, but I feel like you almost need to say, okay, here's your checklist. When you're confronted with a claim, go down the checklist. And if it doesn't meet all the checks, don't bring it to the line. If it does, bring it to us and we can deconstruct it. But if it's not meeting all these checks, let's set it to the side and maybe wait till it does.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so another reminder, hit like and subscribe. First of all, it's free and it helps the channel massively in the algorithm. Hit those little buttons. If there's merch on the merch shelf, click those. You don't even have to buy it. Just click it. YouTube loves clicks.
It does.
Yeah, and we're going to read Super Chats, $5 or more after these next 3 calls. But we're going to try one more time. Hopefully he's tapped his phone and woken it up so we can actually have this conversation. Souse in Turkey, pronouns he, him, says Islam is revelation from God. Souse, you are live on Chewed Gum. Are you there? Hello? No, I think your web caller is not working. Too bad. There was the one theist call who actually, like, I felt like I could really jump in on, because I'm like, oh, that's just a general theistic claim. I can jump in on that. There
were a lot of directions.
Yeah, no science apologetics necessary for that one. Okay.
Call in next time we're on Souse, and I'd love to have that conversation. Well, actually, that one's one where I'm kind of a little bit out of my depth, just because I'm not nearly as well informed on Islam as I am on Christianity. I can get there with the Genesis overlap, but past that, I'm kind of hopeless. So calling somebody who's an expert on that is on.
Yeah.
Or just talk to Arden.
I generally would just go to like an epistemological route. Like, how do you know that in the first place? Because then I don't even have to address the specifics, knowing Islam in particular, just be like, how do you even know the things you're claiming in the first place? Okay, there are 2 callers. I think we're going to take Winston first, because he's been on the line for an hour and 20 minutes, and that is Cuckoo Bananas. So Winston, he, him in Japan, says how Republicans are trying to, I think they want to talk about how Republicans are trying to increase teen pregnancies by restricting abortion drugs. Sounds a little conspiratorial, but maybe not too off base based on things that are happening. Winston, you are live. Talk to us. What's going on?
Hi, Arden. Hi, Erika. Thanks for taking my call.
Yeah. Hey, Winston.
So, there's a recent article about 3 Republican attorneys general suing the FDA from Missouri, Kansas, and Idaho, and they want more births because they're afraid that a declining population would lose them a seat in Congress or federal funding. And I think that's just insane. I think going after the FDA is actually a distraction, because the only way to increase the birth rate is to deny women education and contraception. I think they've seen what's happening in Saudi Arabia and Africa, and that's what they're trying to do in the US.
I think that it's sort of a two birds, one stone kind of thing. I think that the rising birth rate that would result from banning abortifacients or birth control of any kind would be a happy little coincidence in addition to restricting women from having any kind of bodily autonomy with regard to reproduction. I agree that they definitely want the population to go. There are a lot of these like doomers and futurists and things like that who are like really freaking out about population collapse. I don't really know where that comes from because population cannot infinitely grow, not here at least. So eventually it's going to have to level off, and to level off, like it's going to eventually start to crash after that, right? Like that's kind of part of all of this. Unless they want to, speed up on fixing climate change or getting us to another location in the solar system, like starting doing extraplanetary stuff or whatever, we're kind of SOL on infinite growth here on this planet. So I don't really get that, but it seems to be something that's really freaking a lot of people out. I get the infrastructure impact and whatever. But I think that's more of a happy side effect for them. I don't think that, trying to get the FDA to ban abortifacients or the Plan B or whatever is directly because of population. I think that if that happened, yay, that's more teen pregnancies and undereducated women in areas that might vote for them. But I don't think that's the goal.
Yeah, that's why I had asked Winston if they said that specifically was their motivation, because I was thinking the same thing as Erika. Like I can see them being happy for that as like a benefit, but it's pretty rare that they're going to just outright say that is their motivation.
Of course, Arden, we just watched Elon Sig Heil at the inauguration.
Yes.
So maybe
true.
we're totally full of it and we don't know what we're talking about. It could be.
So
that's just what the article says. I'm guessing they looked at the briefs, and that's what they put in the briefs.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's hard to comment without like actually seeing the article you're referencing or knowing the cases. I don't doubt that these cases are happening for sure, and yeah, I just it's one of these things where I don't think this is a completely unreasonable conspiracy, right? Much like when people are afraid that they're going to put trans people in camps. I don't think that's an unreasonable conspiracy, but I don't know that we're quite to a place where I see them like openly calling for that or call even like even dog whistling that is like their intention. But I have seen lots of people in the conservative right who are like pundits or talking heads or popular Twitter accounts who do a lot of discussion on birth rates and how we need to be making more babies in the US and blah, 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 blah. But yeah, it's hard for me to really comment without knowing the specifics of the case.
I think it's a big bundle of different things. It's tough to tease apart.
I think the modern day getters and camps are the slums where there aren't enough jobs and everyone's on Social Security if they're lucky, and if not, then they just die on the streets.
Oh yeah, my realistic fear for the end of the Trump presidency is like gulags and or like state media. That's my unfounded conspiracy expectation for the direction that things are going. But yeah, I mean, we live in a time where the people in charge believe and prop up the most radical, insane ideologies that it's I think it's reasonable to fear that some of them are going to become dominant in culture. Yeah, but I don't know to the extent with maybe people in chat can confirm or deny.
It's a reasonable thing to fear too. Like the people who study history at all, right? And I'm not a historian, but I know enough about the history in the United States and the history, abroad with regard to major events that like it's really, really tough to look at where we're at and where we've been the last 5 years and really last 10 years and the attitudes that have been getting more and more comfortable in the public square to not see Weimar Germany a little bit, right? Like, I'm not saying that is history doesn't necessarily repeat, but it often rhymes. And I think that's at least cause enough for us to be like, okay, it's time to be vigilant, right? Maybe it's nothing. I hope it's nothing. But those connections, not nothing. Maybe it's not as bad, but like those connections are it's tough to not see those. So, I don't know. I'm very it sucks, but I'm like hesitant to completely poo-poo any weird conspiracy theory that has roots in what people are just openly saying on Maine. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah, times are bad.
I'm not sure exactly if there was like a question or something tied in with this, Winston. I mean, like, I definitely, if that's happening, I mean, regardless, like, trying to, bring up a lawsuit, regardless of your motivation to ban access to like mifepristone, I'm gonna have a problem with that, right? Like, I want women to have access to abortifacients or abortions, whatever they need, because abortion is healthcare. But yeah, I'm hesitant to make claims about people's motivation. I think is usually my thing, because like, unless they explicitly state so, I don't know what's in someone's head. And it just feels like an unnecessary, like you could almost kind of put yourself in a bad situation where they get to dismiss you and to like use you as an example for, oh, the left is so crazy, they think we're doing this thing because they're asserting that I believe my motivation is this, my motivation is really this thing over here. Like, it's hard to get into someone's head and make claims about like exactly what their motivations are without like a really robust body of evidence. Yeah.
Mhm.
But if there's no other question, we're going to move on to the last caller, Winston. But I'm happy to, if there was like a question or anything tagged on with that.
Thanks very much for taking my call.
Okay. You have a lovely night. Thank you so much for waiting almost 2
You
hours
too.
for us to
Thank
have
you.
such a short call. Later, Winston.
Bye.
Especially because what time is it in Japan right now? Gotta be like early morning tomorrow?
What time is it in Japan? There are probably multiple time zones. It's like 10:45
in the morning tomorrow.
Or, it's 10:45 tomorrow.
Okay.
So it's okay. This was a call that he had while he was having like a second cup of coffee.
Yeah, that's fair. It wasn't getting up at like 6 a.m. for us. All right. And the last call we have is going to be kind of echoing one of the calls earlier. So we'll see how this one differs. We got Daximus, he, him from Trinidad and Tobago, who wants to talk about, if religion really harms women. Maybe we made too strong a claim. So Daximus, you are live. Get into it with us. What's going on?
Hello, good night.
Hello.
Hi there.
Okay, so I am from a country with quite literally every creed and race, right? Well, except some, I wouldn't say every creed and race, but the majority, right? That's all the major religions, and the country was built off of that. Well, due to Christopher Columbus and whatnot, but when you say like religion, right? What exactly do you mean by that?
Yeah, so I mean, like I was saying earlier, I think to a certain extent, all religions harm in the sense that they're going to teach someone to believe in something that's unfalsifiable, something that they can't defend with evidence. And I think that's a problem. I also think the majority of the dominant religions are the Abrahamic religions, which are like overtly misogynistic. I wouldn't deny, though, that there are some individuals for whom they probably get a net benefit out of religion. They're getting community, and that there are some people, some sects of the Abrahamic religions that are progressive and that lift up women and queer people. So I don't think that every individual is harmed by religion, like in a net sense. But I do think that like believing in unfalsifiable things is going to be harmful in a sense across the board.
Okay, so I'm not sure if this would be like a special case or anecdotal in some sense, but in my country is, well, I believe it was top 4, I believe it's the top 7th now in the crime rate in the world, and the most, okay, so how do I word this? okay, basically what I'm trying to say is the more secular the person is in this country, the more likely they are to go into the dark side in the sense of, well, murder, drugs, well, any gang related things, they tend to go towards this. And I can say this because this country is very compact, small, and it has, well, basically everyone knows each other, right? And we know who is a part of what, and we have a general ideas of their beliefs. But another thing is that because the culture is so mixed, the it's like how do I word it? It's like okay, so you have like, okay, I can think of it like a block, right? Like say I let's say I'm atheist, right? And my neighbor is Muslim, my other neighbor is Hindu, my other neighbor is some sect of Christianity. And I don't know if I don't know if it would be fair to say that they don't follow their religion to every word, likely due to education or not reading it, but they grew up in it. So they tend to identify themselves with that.
Sure.
And they basically that's like spread across the country. I do it would have the very serious ones in minorities that hard follow everything about them, well, about the religion, regardless of the sect or type or like the way they tend to follow their religion. Like Islam, you have like the less serious ones, and then you have like the very serious ones, and then you see like the daughters and things be in arranged marriages. Same with Hinduism, but that's due to the well, I don't know if females would be the right word, but I'll say women. Due to the women who well due to the women who grow up in a house where who their grandfather and basically their entire family grew up in. So they would be in that and they would get groomed into following
So
that
if I can interrupt, Daxmus, I
sure.
get kind of what you're talking about, where like sure, a lot of people grow up in a religion and they are not like devout followers, and so they don't necessarily perpetrate the worst harms that are like called for in the religion. You know, we're not seeing a lot of Christians taking slaves these days, and we're not seeing like I think probably Christian communities are a lot more egalitarian now than they used to be. Not saying they're majority egalitarian in like marriages or whatever, but I think probably a lot more than they were in the last 50 years. There's probably a more egalitarian relationship between a husband and wife. Like, yeah, I'm not denying that there are people who have good lives, who promote good around them and in their communities and with their neighbors, that hold religious belief. I am just saying that I think the dominant religions in our culture are overwhelmingly in their like orthodox sort of presentation. You know, plain reading of texts of the holy books are usually misogynistic, patriarchal. A lot of them are anti-queer. They endorse terrible behaviors like slavery. And most importantly, they teach you to accept claims on bad reasoning. And those are my primary concerns. I totally accept that there are individuals and probably even individual communities that do lots of good and whose, participants aren't coming out of it laden with trauma like that. Totally. It is, as we said with the previous caller who brought up this, it is a hyperbolic title, and I'm happy to defend it, and I think I have, but I agree with you. Like there are communities that are interfaith, that have Hindus and Muslims and Christians, and they all get along and they help their neighbors and they live happy, long lives. When I'm saying religion harms people or harms women, I'm not disputing that.
Okay, so I just want to add into this, right? So though it would go like past just focusing on women, women themselves, but sorry for my accent, by the way. I don't know if it'll be hard to get what I'm trying to say, but the
Yeah, you're doing great.
okay, basically what I want to go further into now is the idea that the further or the more secular community becomes, it can open up more avenues to going into an immoral
I'm not sure that's
worldview
demonstrably true,
due
though,
to
Daximus.
what's that?
You're saying that the more secular a community becomes, the more open they are to amoral behavior in some capacity. And I'm not sure that's actually demonstrably true. I think, like we talked about with the previous caller, first of all, there aren't a lot of good examples of like large scale secular communities that you can draw good data from. But as there is even some data that suggests that like atheists are more charitable than religious people. So I
Well,
don't really. I mean, if you have some actual data to present, I'm happy to consider that. But I don't think it's just. I'm not going to just flatly accept that the more secular a community becomes, the more open to immoral behavior that they are. I don't think that's true.
well, it's not necessarily like in a sense. Yes, I am saying that, but um, so I wouldn't have had like hard facts or any citations or anything to like back this up, right? Well, this is why I said the start of the call it may be a bit anecdotal, but in this country I'm in, the more secular or the less one is to believe in a higher being, the more they would going into crime, if that makes sense. Like they would be more
So if I
willing
may,
to do it, and they would have this no care, this don't care attitude in a sense,
so if I
because
may,
they feel
Daxmas,
wrong in the
this is
world.
kind of what we were talking about earlier as well, right? With the other caller, which is that you have to be very careful when you're conflating secularism and religion versus community and non-community, right? Like, is the reason why crime is higher in this proposed region that's more secular in your country? Is it because it's more secular, or is it because the community is less tight knit? um I think it's easy to look at something and say, oh, I don't think as many people are religious over there, so that must be the reason. But we know that the tight nature of communities is in and of itself an extremely powerful force, even divorced from religion, when it comes to deterring things like crime, gang activity, whatever. Because as you were articulating earlier, and quite well at that, um, people know each other. You were like, you might have a neighbor that's a Hindu, you might have a neighbor that's a Islamic, you might have a neighbor that's some denomination Christian, whatever.
Yeah,
Know
well, right.
each other well.
That's the thing, right? So because of that, I myself know the circles. I have direct ties to a lot of different groups that are in these things. They let's just say they are very powerful and they have a lot of money, right? Well, the country itself is a bit poor, like any general consensus. So the people with money would have, well, they would have all the power basically, right? And they are the ones that tend to head the communities and whatnot. But the
Right. So
the reason,
it's not secularity. I'm not sure what the adjective form of that is. It's not that these individuals are secular that's making them immoral, is the point that we're trying to lead to. It's that it's in being secular and having a lack of community in these areas, that in and of itself could definitely lead to someone, more incidents of crime if somebody's feeling isolated and, detached from their community. But it's not being secular in and of itself that causes that, I think, is kind of what we're getting at.
Like
well,
Daxmas,
it's more things like jealousy
that
and just
in that
wanting.
region, though. Here, let me make one point real quick, and I'll boot it back to you. It could be that in that one part of like the community or whatever, like the secular region, maybe they also, like, for whatever reason, the people that live there just don't like fish. They don't eat as much fish as people in your community. Like, you could just as easily say the reason why they're committing so much more crime is because they're not eating enough fish. That's the reason, right? Like, because clearly the connection is there. Areas that people are eating more fish have less crime. Areas that aren't eating fish have more crime. And so you could draw that connection, but it's not that simple, right? You might be
Well,
right. Maybe it is that they're secular and that's the reason, but I don't think you can say that just with anecdotes.
well, this is what I was trying to like depict, right? Is like even the persons who have the money, they are the ones that are leading. Then you could think of them like a mafia boss, if that makes sense. And they would only take part in religious things for the idea behind it. A lot of people go into the religious communities and whatnot is just for food or just for the party. They like to get together and just do these things, but regardless of that, like if they actually do believe in that particular sect or not, they would still go into a life of bad things.
What kind of bad things? Give me some specifics, because you're kind of just vaguely gesturing at them being bad, and you're not making a convincing case. Mind you, also this whole call started on the premise that whether or not religion harms women, whether or not secular people are worse or commit crime, also does nothing to defend the position of whether or not religion is good for women or is not harmful for women.
Well, so, that's the thing, right? The link to that is because in my case it's very close knit. It harms everyone then, not just women.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
Not religion alone is what I'm saying, right? Like, even if
I said that earlier, religion absolutely harms everyone. I think there's good reason to specifically indicate the harm that it does to women, because there is a long cultural and still standing like misogynistic patriarchal force that religion pushes on over women. But yes, I absolutely agree that I think religion in the same way harms everybody. So Daxmus, I'm trying to get to a point with this caller because we are also at the end of the show and we're going to have to put a button on this soon. I kind of would have liked to have known what specific bad things that you think secular people are doing.
Oh yeah, like guns, shooting, thievery, gang violence, racketeering. Racketeering, that it would
Sure.
I can't bring the word to mind right now, but I understand what you're saying, but I wouldn't say it's religion alone, because even in my case, even though it's somewhat anecdotal because I don't have like citations, in this country, the more secular individuals tend to become, even in groups, they would go more into harming communities then for their own spiteful or envious behaviors.
Again, I don't want to. I have no reason to believe that it's out of envy. I mean, I think that's just conjecture. But so to the extent, I'm just going to take your word on this because I don't know what the demographics of the people who commit crime in Trinidad and Tobago are. Just taking your word for it. Just taking your word for it. Again, this is not secularism that is causing people to commit crime. There's no reason to believe that at all. It's likely being ousted from the community would be a much more reasonable explanation of that, but also it doesn't do anything to defend whether or not religion is harmful or not to women. So I appreciate what we're trying to say, Daxmus, and I appreciate adding nuance to the hyperbolic title. That is totally warranted. But if that's it, then I think we're probably going to put a button on this and end the call, because I'm not sure that we're kind of running in loops at this point, you know?
I think so. Sorry, I couldn't articulate my thoughts properly.
No,
No,
you're
don't sweat it, Daxus. I think we're just at the point where it's like, you've got these anecdotal experiences, and that doesn't, we're not trying to say that those anecdotal experiences don't have any validity, or that they don't, maybe you might even be right. But we're at the point, I think, in this conversation where it's like you've got this vibe kind of about the situation, and it's sort of being presented in a way that Arden and I can't really cross-check it, and so it's kind of just like a your word versus ours, and I think that's kind of where we have to keep it until we get some additional data, or an additional like argument from either you or us. You know what I mean?
yeah.
I understand.
Cool. I appreciate
you
the
for calling, though.
conversation. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Okay, have a good night.
You as well, Daxmas. Bye. Yeah.
Super chats.
All right, we're getting on to super chats. Let me close this out
You
really
guys
quick.
don't know this, but I have a sandwich on the other side of this call-in show today. Because people complain every time I eat my sandwiches on this show, this time I specifically was like, I will not eat that sandwich on the show because people will complain about it. So I exercised immense amounts of restraint, and I feel like I should get accolades for that.
You do get accolades. I don't personally mind people eating on stream, but I know some people are like really bothered by it, and I don't really understand, because it's like kind of like when people get weird about like farting. I don't understand that, because I'm like, it's such a normal human thing. I can't really understand why it bothers somebody, but okay.
Also, I feel like I do a good job muting myself when they don't like the noshing. I think they don't like when I got this big, nice, delicious sandwich. I think it's out of envy that they feel that way. But it's like the show is it starts at 6 for me. I gotta have something to eat, you guys. I gotta feed the machine.
Yeah, I always do a little snack before, and then I eat properly after. I am also pretty hungry, so let's get into these super chats. 10 pounds from Herbie Shine. Can't stay up to watch tonight in real UK time. Just a preemptive super chat. Have you seen the vid of the bishop speaking to the orange man? It's on BTC. It's a thing of beauty. Yeah, we mentioned it earlier in the show. It was it's a great example of ways that religion can be a positive force. Well, it's not even that religion in that instance is a positive force. That individual who is like a religious leader is doing a positive thing,
Yeah, I thought that was pretty cool, and I really liked to see it because more than ever right now, I think that we need solidarity on standing up for what's right, regardless of what our position on religion or irreligion is. Like things have gotten dire enough that it's like we need to band together as progressives and as people who care, first and foremost.
Yep.
Big 10.
The biggest.
Okay, $5 from Amargan. What the heck? From Zurith Moonpaw. Erika, I'm going to draw you as a Monkey Fu Master from Kim Possible. As Monkey Fu Master from Kim Possible? Yeah, do it. That guy was awesome. Monkey Fist, where he was like, he like crawls around, he like knuckle walks, I thought that guy was my favorite villain in the whole show. He was great. Him and the Himbo are my two favorite villains in that show. You remember the Himbo? I forget his name. Someone in chat tell me what the Himbo villain is from Kim Possible.
I don't remember the Himbo, but I do recognize Monkey Fist for sure. Kim Possible was one of my lesser watched shows of the Disney like cartoon era, but I did watch it.
I want you guys to know that when you Google Himbo villain Kim Possible, it does come up as a suggested, and it's the right guy. He's right here. Hold on, what's his name?
I love that.
He's even doing like a. Hold on, let me get. I'm gonna let you guys know. Hold on, fandom.com. I'm an adult. What's his name?
Oh, he's like a pop star.
Senior Junior. Thank you. Thank you, Rain Angel 111.
Cat coming through.
Senior Junior. That's the one.
Thank you
Thanks,
for
guys.
also being chronically cartoon watchers as kids. Or adults.
Yeah.
50 Australian dollars, alleged dollars from Tammy B. Got some budget for TACIS. Payday is tomorrow. Nice. Thank you so much. We appreciate your support, Tammy.
Okay, we got $5 from SJ Yell. Those who deny actual history are doomed to repeat it. Welcome to 1930s Germany. I want to believe that this super chat came before we talked about it. I want to believe that happened and that we're seeing it now and that
I think it did.
We're reaping what we sow here.
Yeah, this is early enough in the list, and that happened just a little bit ago. So I think, honestly, my sense of time on these shows is so wild. I used to do theater, and the experience is so similar where I'd be like kind of nervous as I'm sitting down and getting ready, you know, just going live. It's like not a bad nerves, but they're just nerves.
Yeah.
And then
Yeah, I know
I
what you
kind of
mean.
like black out until it's over. And I'm like, oh yeah, I was just on a live show for 3 hours. I don't even like
Yeah.
remember what I said.
When I do a 9-hour show with Forrest, at the end of that, it feels like coming to from anesthesia. Like I wake up, I'm like, what happened? Like where did the time go? What happened to me? Like
I totally
it's
believe
lost
it.
time. I was abducted by aliens.
$5 from the Raven 200. Now a Nez purse word from Raven. Pronounced Miupkawit. Miupkawit. The Nez purse singular word for a baby or infant. Yaxkolo. That is all. I appreciate it, Raven. I'm sorry if I totally butchered all those pronunciations. I'm sure I did. Fucking, it's the white colonizer in me.
Every time I mess up pronunciations too, and someone's like, you should have looked it up beforehand, I'm like, yes, you're right. I should have, but I didn't.
But I
like,
didn't.
that one's on me, folks. I'm sorry. I'll try to do better next time. I really will. I just, you know, I'm a loser, so I continue to fail. It is what it is. $5 from Monkey, a typewriter. Y'all look up Smedley Butler and Business Plot. It's basically the time the fascists came closest to a full-blown takeover. It's prescient.
Ooh.
I don't want to do that, Monkey at a typewriter. I don't want to do that. That's gonna give me more depressed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ask me in 4 years, then I'll do it. If we're still here.
$5 from Cheeseburger. Monday night at 7, saw some folks online complaining about U.S.-Mexico border. Very tempting to say, well, hey now, we've had the most secure borders for 7 hours. Yeah, right. Yeah, I'm really nervous because I live in a community in Austin where a lot of my neighbors, I mean, I don't know their documented status, but they're exclusively Spanish speakers. Like half of our neighbors are. And we've had really good, like, on Halloween, we couldn't talk to each other, but we were like hanging out in the street. Like they were interacting with our snakes and like trying to make conversation as best we could. And it'd be really sad. The people getting like ripped out of their homes and communities and stuff.
It always starts with the deportations. That's worth putting out there. And maybe it ends there here. I hope so. But you know, $5 from Jason Jones. Erika, why are geese feet made of kiki pizza, but Jimmy refuses to love them? Also, does your pet skeleton ever come alive to xylophone dance? This skeleton comes alive and walks the halls of this house every night. That's why I love that skeleton very much. You guys are actually the first time to see, by the way, speaking of the bones behind me, I got a new bone shelf for several skulls, some of which are real and some of which are fake, that I'm excited to show off in a video that I haven't recorded yet. But you know, the bone collection grows. As for why geese feet are made of kiki pizza, it's probably an evolutionary advantage to have little kiki pizza feet.
What the fuck's kiki pizza? I feel like I'm on an acid trip. What's going on?
Don't listen to him. He unapologetically hates for the love of the game. Don't listen to what he has to say about geese.
Jimmy
They're great.
does love to be a hater. I also love to be a hater a little bit, but you know, it means I have to hate on other haters too. $5 from Cheeseburger again. I hope everyone got to see Melania's head her husband from kissing her on the cheek. Hashtag small victories. Hashtag I hope I'm not Betty. You know, I saw that and I saw a gif of I'm trying to remember the actor's name. He was in Pose and a number of other things. He had like a similar style hat that had like a retractable like tassel brim, and it was
yes,
like that is really how it felt.
I know what you're talking about. I've seen that gif. I know the one. Oh shoot, what is that from?
Someone will put it in chat. It might be from Pose. I don't remember the actor's name. That's what I'm blanking on. I know he also did like a tour like last year or something.
I think so. And I also might just be remembering the gif like in my head too.
Sure.
Also, I saw another comparison of her hat to the Hamburglar from the franchise.
Yeah, it did have Hamburglar vibes. Billy Porter, thank you, Cheeseburger. I appreciate it. Someone was
like in the comments too. They were like, she's doing this to show her solidarity for felons.
Nice.
I was like, yeah, true. In a way, Trump is like the Hamburglar, but instead of stealing burgers from McDonald's, he's stealing everything else from the common person in this
From
thing.
everyone.
It's okay.
Uh,
10 Canadian dollars from Quantum Chaos. Hi, Erika. Hi, Arden. I am too sad today for a funny joke. Stay strong, persist. We're playing for keeps now. Love you all. Erika, your channel is how I first ended up here, so thanks for that. Ha! Tricked you into coming here and seeing more content similar to mine. Gotcha. Gotcha, Quantum Chaos.
I totally feel
And thank you for the
the
kind words.
too much to be funny vibes. Big relate. 9 Australian dollarinos from Tammy B. Kingdom Protista were seen as a junk draw until interesting. That is I would say draw until they were included in the eukaryote cladogram.
Yeah, I actually so every time I get brave and step out of Kingdom Animalia into any other kingdom of life, I start realizing that other than Plantae and fungi, and a couple of others, there's basically a couple of different kingdoms where, because life is so transitional and odd in nature, we don't really know where to put them. It's very difficult to come up with a unifying set of characteristics for all life, even at the kingdom level. Usually that's a problem we only face down at the species and genus level, but just goes to show how weird living critters are and how cool.
I love that. It's so interesting how, just mystifying and diverse life is on Earth. It is really cool.
It's amazing. Since I was a kid, I've always been like the kind of person that I'll get on like a Wikipedia rabbit hole. Like a couple of nights ago, this was maybe 2 weeks ago, I was like reading about types of seals. So like pinnipeds in general, the earless seals, the eared seals, what they look, which ones are dimorphic and which ones aren't. And I learned about so many species of seal that I had never even heard of. Still, I find myself in awe at the natural world. Just in the kingdom that I'm supposed to be like well versed on, I'm learning new things. It's really amazing.
Oh yeah. Wait, was this from me?
Yeah, this one's you.
Okay. 10 Canadian dollars from Quantum Chaos. Erika.
It was me. You go ahead.
Yeah, I mean, whatever. It doesn't really matter. Are there any examples of a servant leadership among other primates, e.g., the leader of a group putting three well-being of the group ahead of themselves?
Their well-being, probably.
Yeah, their well-being ahead of themselves and not being a douchebag.
Yeah, we see altruism in, obviously many primates, but even from a leader perspective, alpha tenure as leader is much longer in benevolent alphas as compared to asshole alphas. And they're benevolent both because they sometimes let others eat first. They'll prioritize the group over themselves sometimes. And perhaps most importantly, at least according to Franz de Waal, they're mediators. So when others are fighting, they'll come in and break it up and then console both parties, which is kind of a critical part. Because it's basically cool. No, don't fight. And then it's like, I know you're upset. It's okay. I get it. Which is, I don't know, familiar.
That is so interesting. I have 2 emerald tree skinks, and they're like one of the few, social like reptile species. And I noticed them kind of like do that between themselves, like especially at feeding time. They'll kind of fight, but then they'll like make up and they'll be like, okay, we're gonna sit together and kind of like recoup after that because you bit my tail and I was a little mad, but like now we're friends again.
Yeah, it's like you crash out, but then you get over it. It's one of those things too where like people get accused all the time of like anthropomorphizing other animals, but there's been this recent resurgence idea, or rather an initial surgence of an idea lately that it's like, okay, are we really anthropomorphizing them, or are we just exhibiting their behavior at a different level, right? And we're just recognizing a part of ourselves in them that came from a common ancestor between us both, which is, I like that a lot better, I think. $5 from Jake. Insert clever, dapper inside joke here. Nelson, I was watching on 1.5 to get caught up. Not sure when 1.5 Erika stopped and regular Erika started. Yeah. Fair enough, Jake.
Fair enough. We got $5 from Soupy Dude, Erika and Arden. That's some of the coolest hosts the line has. Rue, much needed after yesterday and today, and to prepare for tomorrow and the next 4 years. That's just so true, though. I would love to do more shows with Erika, but I feel like you're usually on Skeptalk and I'm usually on TACIS, so like our paths seldom cross, but I appreciate it when they do.
It's rude that yeah, it's weird. They always seem to cross here. I think this is because we're both women, so it's like they throw us on chewed gum. It's like,
Yeah.
we're women, so chewed gum.
We're the backup chewed gum folks, so that's what we're.
That's exactly it. When they don't have anybody for it, they're like, all right, who can we phone in for this?
Yes. Jimmy texted me yesterday. He's like, hey, can you do this? And I was like, yeah, I'll do it.
Yeah. He also asked, he did the same thing. He was like, are you available here? And then I forgot for 3 days. And then he was like, bump. And I was like, yes, I am. Sorry.
He does. I love that he does the bump because I miss texts all the time. So I need the bump.
Well, and it's not even missing them. It's like you see them and you're like, yes, I've acknowledged that this is seen. But then it's like that my idiot brain is like, and also you're going to let them know that you saw it and tell them what you think, right? And I'm like, nope, I'm going to forget about it for 3 days.
Right.
$8 from Ivan Girardi. Tiddlywinks add up over time to twaddlywinks over the time. Yeah, I'm on board with this. That's better than what I came up with.
Fair enough. I have no retort.
Or that might be what I came up with. I actually can't remember what the end game of many tiddlywinks result. I can't remember what the joke was, but I think that was probably it. Because I think the joke is that it sounds like twat, you know? So it's like twaddlywinks.
Sure.
So I approve.
I approve. Also, at the rate super chats are coming in, if I get to 4 pages of super chats, I might bump up the super chat threshold to 10.
Holy.
We're
are we getting that many super chats? Why? Why do they care so much all of a sudden?
I saw one coming in that was like super chatting just to keep us away from dinner for moments longer. So thanks, Eric.
Oh, I hate when they do that. They do that all the time. Especially
one of our hosts.
They do this when it's me and Forrest too, because they think it's funny for us to try to beat the record every time. The record is 9 hours. We end up doing super chats for like 3 hours.
I know. Yeah, you guys, your super chats are crazy. But also, like, Forrest loves to indulge the joke. Like, he is the worst at leaning so hard into the bit.
Not only does he lean into the bit, he calls back an unnecessary amount of time. And I hope that you're listening, Forrest. I try to let you know at every juncture that the jokes that you frequently make me want to go on a rampage in my local area. And given I'm like 7 stories tall, that is severe. It would cause untold billions in damages, really. $5 from Monkey to Typewriter. One thing I think can be said about religion is that the vast majority of religious adherents are in misogynistic faiths or religious communities. I don't know the stats on that, but it wouldn't surprise me.
At least of the Abrahamic faiths, like I would say, like within the U.S., I could probably
really
agree to that.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was thinking, in my head, I was thinking Abrahamic faiths, and then when you said that, I was like, oh, duh. Like, Buddhism is usually pretty chill, although a lot of people don't know this. One of the larger sects, denominations of Buddhism, actually does have a couple of little misogynistic bents to it. When I was in Thailand doing my undergrad research, we went on Sundays to go give food to the Buddhist temple that was just outside the research station. And they're not allowed to accept food directly from women. They can accept it directly from men, but if you're a woman, you have to set it on the ground and then they'll pick it up, which I didn't love that, you know?
So I don't understand like what purpose that could possibly serve. It's extremely irritating.
There was an explanation, but I can't remember it, so.
$5 from Tate. If gender is a social construct, how does anyone identify as any gender? I identify as female only because of my sex assigned at birth. I don't fit into society's boxes. So, this is like, man, I'm gonna try to not get into this. How can I elevator pitch this? I think that it seems like you're making the common mistake of assuming that because something is a social construct, that means it like doesn't exist. I think like social constructs like gender can have heavy correlations with like normative like statistical appearances of like behaviors between the sexes. So like I think if you're just feeling like I just kind of identify as a female or a woman because that's like I was assigned female at birth and I don't really want to think too deeply about it, I think that's fine. I also think it's a little bit of like there is like gender apathy as a valid identity or whatever, if that's how you feel. I also think there's an element of like cis privilege and like passing privilege can come along with this as well, where like I don't feel good when someone calls me ma'am. I just don't feel like Minecrafting myself. Is that the kids euphemism these days?
Yeah. Yes.
Whereas like if someone calls me sir, I do feel that way. So it's like I also feel completely neutral and bland about like being attributed feminine like phrases and adjectives or whatever. I just it feels really bad when you do male ones to me. So I think there's like a sort of apathy when you're just kind of like just passing and normative. It's like I don't feel anyway because this is just kind of the norm, and I fit into the norm. So
I'm really loving Minecrafting as the specific verb. I really like that.
listen, I've had a lot of mental health things through my day, so I love making jokes about like killing myself, but I know some people find it really triggering, so I try to like balance that. But like if it was no holds barred, I would have just said it outright, and I did just say it outright. But
You like paused and then you were like, Minecrafting? And I was like, I definitely get what you're going for, and I really like that as the euphemism. That made me laugh.
Thanks.
That made me smile. $10 from Ben X. I'm so sorry this is happening to women in LGBTQ in the US. Arden, but I think they mean Arden. Please move to Australia. All atheist scientists and LGBTQ come to Australia. So I do love Australia, but what I will say is sometimes you guys do a little bit of the thing where you're like us, but slightly behind and less bad. Like Canada does this sometimes too. We're the bully on the playground where we like try to make other people follow our lead, and then better nations sometimes, not always, and that certainly is to y'all's credit, right? But then they do our shitty if you jumped off a bridge thing. And I hope that doesn't happen. You guys need to stay strong. Do what we could not.
I will say Australia did just release a review of gender affirming care for minors, and they found that it is like safe and effective and that it improves the lives of trans minors, which shocker, because all the ones that are like restricting care never say anything about it being harmful. They're just like, oh, there's not enough evidence to say that it's good. But France and Australia had reviews that found that it was all safe and effective. So
it's funny too how those ones never seem to trend on Twitter or Meta platforms.
Right?
That's so weird.
Curious.
It's so weird that happened. It's probably a coincidence.
Yeah, definitely just a coincidence. $10 from the Raven 200 to echo skeptics and scoundrels. Even if religion preached mostly positive things, the conclusions being reached are by irrational means. Jimmy, Go Take a Blood Demon are Exploding Blood by Nezuko. I love your insults. They're so funny. I mean, that's kind of what I was getting at.
You guys do like anime and like Magic the Gathering jokes, and I'm a huge dork, so I can appreciate it, but sometimes I don't catch them. And what is this a reference to, Arden? Do you know?
This is a reference to, I'm forgetting the name of the anime. It's kind of a newer one, a Demon Hunter. No, not Demon Hunter. Demon Slayer, maybe? I can't remember.
I've heard of that,
watched
but I've not seen
a chunk of it. But yeah, they all have, I think Nezuko is like the main protagonist female character, like sister to the actual protagonist boy, because obviously it's an anime. We're gonna look at the boy. The boy is the hero, obviously.
Yeah. Well, she can come on if she's hot, or if she's either right around the age where things are questionable and it's a fan service type of show. I've seen those too. I've seen those
anime
too.
Has a little bit of the fan servicey gross stuff. Demon Slayer, that's what it is. Thank you, chat. I appreciate it.
Thanks, chat. $5 from Raven the 200, the Raven 200, sorry. Be sure to consensually carry that like button to bed and give it its choker a nice tug after you're done clapping its cheeks. Hashtag kinky like button gang. Yeah, okay. I'd be sure.
Clapping its cheeks.
Why not?
Is so funny. I love that. Great
euphemism. Consensually, so like the like button is down.
Oh, it's so down.
It's fine.
It's absolutely down. $20 from Mod. Secular societies spend large percentages of their wealth on preventing disasters from happening in the first place. A religious village bands together after a flood, while an atheist village builds a dam. Yeah, I mean, again, I'm not sure how many great examples we have of like secular societies to pull from on doing this thing, but I would presume, purely speculatively, that secular societies would be more interested in following the evidence and doing preventative measures and things like this.
You said it earlier, the like Northern European nations. Someone in chat can bust my chops if I'm wrong on this, but I'm like 90% sure that most of those Northern European nations are like notoriously secular and
Sure.
also notorious for topping charts on quality of life.
Oh
You know, I
yeah.
mean, now whether you can draw that one-to-one, I don't know. I'm not, I don't study demographics or sociology, but I know that observation has been made. And if we're going to make observations like religious communities band together after a disaster, therefore religion better, then I think, you got to follow that to its conclusion, or you need to be empirical on all of it.
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. Yeah, I don't know enough data about the Scandinavian countries, I think.
I think that's the
word I was looking for earlier.
Yeah, I think that's the one.
Yeah, about I mean, I have heard all the things about like, their happiness measurements and things like that, quality of life being really good, but I'm not familiar with any of that data, so I was hesitant to pull on that thread.
I'm looking at chat. I'm waiting for someone to confirm that we are correct. I'm sure it'll happen. I don't even need to look. I'm sure it'll happen.
It will. They
$5
come
for
through.
monkey with typewriter. Erika, I have a few proposals for human-specific behaviors for you. Imprisonment of other species members, generational ritual, and shame. Shame, I don't think so. I think that you can see embarrassment, which is a type of shame, in many different primates, especially like you see it on like attempted coups, if you will, when in like chimps or others where they're trying to overthrow the resident alpha. Generational ritual and species, like imprisoning other species members. Imprisonment, you need, like, because the word imprisonment, you need an actual like place to put the individual. But as far as like forcibly pulling someone into your group from a separate group, we do see that. There are a lot of raiding style cercopithecoids, namely like Hamadryas baboons, that do that. As for generational ritual, also no, because we see in chimpanzee groups that have specific like cultures, so they have cultural localized cultures, like depending on the chimp population they were looking at. So like chimp population 1 might prefer rocks that look like this for smashing open nuts, and then this chimp community might prefer a different type of rock and anvil, or even a completely different tool sets, like their tool sets differ. And then they pass those specific tool sets onto their offspring, which would make them generational rituals depending on how you define ritual and how you define tool, if that makes sense. Or generational, I guess you would say. So maybe.
So cool. Nope, not that one. Here we go. $5 from Domestic. In the fabric of the universe, are there laws that are female, male, gender, or are there fundamental laws that cause differences in biological gender? I mean, there's no like material, like genders are social constructs, so there's no like material fabric of the universe that I could point to that shows there's the male and female gender. Like that's not how that works.
I think the law of conservation of energy strikes me as woman coded, just because she like only a guy would have the confidence to throw something away forever and not think that they'll ever need it.
That's really funny. That's a good one.
If we're gonna anthropomorphize the laws,
you got that there. I mean, like I would say that there are not fundamental laws that cause differences between biological genders. I think there are like normative trends that might be based on like, biological influences, like, having testosterone puberties and things like that. But fundamental laws, I don't, that's the phrase that's kind of tripping me up here on not knowing how to answer your question.
There's laws of inheritance that we have in biology, but that doesn't help you with the gender thing at all.
Right.
Like, and biology is notoriously impervious to laws because biology is squishy and life does things that it wants to do.
Right. And that made me think of, we were talking earlier about like examples of primates where you're like, oh yeah, we can see like, they typically engage in these kind of behaviors, but sometimes they don't. And is that, a deviate? Like, yeah, it's biology is so weird that way.
Yeah. Like, like gender is such a human thing. It's easy for us to say that it's only in us, but is it? It's kind of unfalsifiable though, because we can't ask them. Like we can't say, is what you're doing, is it like how would you describe it, Mr. Vervet Monkey? I
would love to
I'd love to have that conversation.
I know, I want to hear it so bad.
More than anything, I want to have that conversation. God, I want to have it. $4.99 from Life is Literary. I don't mean to psychoanalyze Steve, but he calls a lot and he seems concerningly obsessed with the flood. Creationists often are.
This is just his latest obsession. He's kind of cycled through a few, and yeah, I waver on how responsible it is to take repeat callers like that. Like, I think there's a threshold where it's like good to continue the conversation, but then it kind of crosses the line where I'm like, now we're just kind of taking advantage of your ignorance in a way that I don't think is productive for anyone. And I struggle with that.
There's you were saying it earlier, but there's also like an ethically dubious part of that where it's like, are we just lolcalling someone, you know? Like,
yeah. We had that with a caller on TACIS who called repeatedly so many times, Matthew, and he admitted that he had OCD, and we were like, at a certain point, I'm a little concerned to the extent that we are contributing to like this is like an obsessive kind of thing that you're engaging in. But anyway, we got $20 from Roger Wenzel. Refreshingly smart and occasionally funny. Thank you.
I will take that. Occasionally funny. I'll take that every day. Thank you, Roger.
Right.
$5 from Mr. Boricua 10. I find the fact that other primates are just as queer as we are absolutely fascinating. Same as the very human behavior shown in their habits as well. Yeah, and you want to talk about like LGBTQ stuff, like you want to talk about gay stuff with primates, that extends past primates. That extends out into mammals. It extends like across the order, across the order level. It extends into other entire groups of animals at the class level, rather. Gosh, I'm like losing my mind here. I'm so hungry. I can't think straight. Across the class taxonomic rank, this extends into birds. Birds do gay stuff. And they're social, which is like, most animals are going to do gay stuff incidentally. Most organisms are, just because they're organisms. They're going to do it. But with social animals, there is often intent that can be found, and it's repeated intentionally, which is when you can be like, that's not a misunderstanding. they're getting up to that a lot. Giraffes, lions, bison, loads of different birds, penguins notoriously so. And it's just because like this is so simple, and I don't understand why this is so difficult for people to grasp, but social animals like to be around other social animals, and they like to have connection. And that connection is not limited to a sexual attraction like binary. It's not limited to heterosexuality. And I don't know. It's crazy to me to even try to bin them like that.
Yeah, it's an effort to put people in weird boxes in a way that I'm just like, it just conflates with like human nature, or not conflates, like contradicts human nature in a way that I think is really frustrating. We have $5 from Monkey a Typewriter. Erika, we can't just keep growing the population. I don't know what the plan is. I'm pretty sure the plan is Armageddon is good, actually.
Well, when they're in their little wealthy bunkers or on some shitty outpost on Mars, maybe finally it will sink in for them. When we're long gone, our corpses deep in the ground, maybe then it'll dawn on them. Wait, maybe I should.
I'm not confident.
Maybe we should have something else. $10 from Commander Shepard. I like the show. Would like to debate this topic, but Tuesdays are usually bad. I can debate different days. Great if not, that's fine. Thank you either way for the interesting discussions. Commander Shepard called back on Sundays or on Mondays or on Thursdays, because Arden and I have been on all of those shows together. So not as a team, but combined between the two of us, we have.
Definitely. I always think people would like to debate on the topic. Yeah, you just got to call in. I mean, like, you might have to wait in the queue, but call in. That's why it's a call-in show. Open lines. $5 from Melatonin Ale. Religion definitely harmed me because I felt shame for my very normal decisions and stayed in toxic relationships because of religious indoctrination. Yup. Yeah. I think
oldest time.
Absolutely. The shame element of high control religions, I feel like, is the part that infuriates me the most. $5
from Joshua Everett. My favorite part of any show is when Arden says, let's put a button on it.
I do say that a lot.
Erika, you're my fave primate. Thank you, and keep up the good work. Of all the primates, that's enormously complimentary. Thank you. I do not think that is accurate. I have met some very, very dapper golden lime tamarind. So I think that you're mistaken, but thank you regardless.
Now I'm insecure about how often I say let's put a button on it. I feel like it's a good phrase. It's my most polite way of telling someone like they really need to hurry the fuck up and finish the conversation. $5 from Grayson Hogg. Hey Grayson, what type of sandwich are you having,
Grayson.
Erika? And Arden, if you could have any sandwich right now, what kind would you want? I think like a banh mi sandwich, like it's like, is it Thai? I think. I don't know what the.
Yum.
Yeah.
That sounds amazing. So the kind of sandwich that I get, it's from this little sandwich shop. It's a local sandwich shop near where I live. And they sell this sandwich that it's a sourdough bread. And on it is
The best.
honey roasted turkey, like hot honey roasted turkey, brie, like fresh brie cheese, and apple slices, Granny Smith apple slices. So you
Yeah.
get the tart, you get the savory, you get the hot, you get the cold. It is so good. I can't even tell you how good it is. And I have it with either salt and vinegar chips if I'm feeling a little bit like I want a little bit of like bitter acidity with it, or sometimes I'll have it with sun chips because I like sun chips. I think they're tasty.
That sandwich sounds
And I'm
so
going to have a
good.
beer with it, I think, too. So you guys can eat your heart out. Actually, not you, Grayson. Love to
I
see you,
love a
Grayson.
good sandwich. Sandwiches are so underrated.
They're so good, and people have forgotten the art of just a good sandwich. Because I'm like a single time a day eater, where like I don't eat in the morning at all. I don't even eat in the afternoon because I'm just drinking coffee and I forget to eat usually. And then in the evenings, like a tick, I gorge myself. And so it's like a sandwich is nice because it's something you can throw together and just have in the afternoon. So I don't have to eat myself silly in the evenings and then pass out afterwards.
Yeah. I definitely neglect my mornings often because of coffee. Caffeine does that to me.
You just forget, you're just like doing other stuff. And then you're like, oh, I didn't eat anything. Like, or
Yeah.
a banana, you can have a banana, you can have a bar or whatever. But a sandwich, it hits, you can have them in so many different ways. People forget the beauty of a sandwich. They overcomplicate things. You don't have to make a pasta. You don't have to have a soup. A sandwich is
Yeah.
good enough.
Not
And
cooking
you can fit all
is a
the
big win
nutrients.
for me. Not having to cook is such a
Ugh.
big win.
Oof. It's such a big one. So just have sandwich stuff at your house.
I
Okay.
think-
Oh, this is my turn.
Yep.
5 pounds from the Fuzzy Logic. Really enjoyed the show. As did my cat, Madonna. I see her in your PFP up there. She's beautiful. Who just woke up from her nap and has been next to me watching my TV intently this whole time. What a good little sweet baby. Look at her. She's
Aw.
beautiful. I'm glad I don't have my dogs in the room because they see cats on TV. I'm a dog and a cat person. I love them both, but my dogs don't get along with cats, so I just have dogs right now. And they're mean to cats, so I love to see them when they're not around.
My cat is really pretty good. She's a little bit annoying in a particular way where the only way she knows how to like get attention when we're like watching a show is to knock something off or to like try to cause a problem, and it's purely to get attention. But like the rest of the time, she's a great cat, like so well behaved. But Matt jokingly, he may not say it's joking, but I think it's joking, will constantly be like, God, you are the worst cat. I fucking hate you. Just like all the time. Belligerently cruel to our cat.
When the dogs are bad at our house, we'll go, it's time to go to the glue factory. Get in the car.
Right.
We're taking them to the glue factory. We're dropping them off. They're not coming back. We're taking them back. We're going to the pound. Sorry. And the dogs like look at us. They don't understand.
My cat came in with a bonded pair and she ran away like 4 or 5 months after we got her. She ran out in a winter storm. Don't even know how she got out. We looked everywhere. We called shelters. We talked to all our neighbors. She just disappeared. But now we constantly are like, we're going to send you to where where Velma is, Daphne. We're shipping you off.
Oh my God. That's so dumb.
To the abyss.
Your current cat is like, that's too far.
That was my sister.
You crossed the line.
$9.99 from the Wizard Warlock. Erika, as the Gibbon of the internet, I was wondering if I may have your permission to make myself a Gibbon persona as well.
Well, first of all, I don't have a fursona. It is a
Sure.
it is a mascot that I occasionally use to depict myself. And plus, I have it on good authority from the furries that I have known that it's always very awkward to have an ape. Ape is too far for a fursona. It's too close to people. You can have lemurs. I've seen those, but apes and even monkeys, it seems to push it. So I get off on a technicality on that as well. But yes, you do have my permission, but only if you tell me which gibbon species you have picked, because I want to see what your tastes are. I want to judge your tastes. We got $5 from Matt Dillahunty. Order dinner. # Team Arden. Chinese.
Oh my god. Oh my god.
You lucky dog. You
I'm
lucky
so
dog.
hungry, and now I'm thinking about probably General Tso's chicken is what he got, and probably.
And give you such big portions. You can always get more. You can just eat until you're full. I love Chinese food.
We always get like 3 meals out of it because I'm like, I can't. There's so much food here. I can't eat that many.
They heat up well too, which is nice.
They do. And it enables my laziness. $5 from Ian Roche. Erika challenges forced enthusiasm. Love to see it, but I'm going to need proof of that sandwich. I don't believe in sandwiches I can't see. LOL.
Hey, but you just have to have faith in it. It's downstairs, you know? It divinely revealed itself to me, so maybe you're not trying hard enough.
It would feel pretty divine if I saw a sandwich appear to me too.
$4.99 from poor Claire. Erika has not paid the dog tax. All right, hold on. You go to the next one. I'll pull up a picture of my ones. I know I've got one with all of them in it.
$5 from President Starscream. Hi, Floor. Make me a sandwich. Yes, chronic cartoon watcher. Thank you so much for a great show. Yes, I relate. I love animation in general.
It's just such a good art medium, to be honest. Like, you can just do so much with it. And I've been really delighted to see recently that there have been more in the West. Eastern nations have always had a handle on cartoons are for everybody, and sometimes they can even be for mature audiences. But it's only been recently that the West has figured out that we can just do that as well. And I've been really happy to see that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so good.
Okay,
animation lover.
I don't know. I'll try my best. This is 2 of them. This is my golden retriever. They're on the left, or I don't know what side it is for you. And then Fred is my little King Charles Cavalier. He's there on the right. It's not focusing very well. And then I also have a boxer mix. Here's her sleeping. She's got her little paw tucked like a lamb.
Aww, so cute.
So they're really sweet. But they're really bad. They're really bad dogs. We got them these big Nylabone chews for Christmas. And they're so heavy because the 2 girls are really big and they're big chewers. And then our little boy, he doesn't chew very much. But the girls leave their giant chews around. And then you're stumbling around in the night to get water. And you stub your toe on them. And the rage, I could just punt them out into the cold. I could just pick them up and throw them outside for leaving their shit all over the place. And I'm going to lose a toenail on one of them. They're so big. $5 from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Super chatting to keep Arden. Oh, interesting. To keep Arden and Erika from dinner for just a few months longer. Do you think Clifford is a kaiju? I do. Yeah. For me, if it's big and intimidating and stomps around and could potentially level a building, I think it counts as a kaiju.
That is the funniest thing. I've never thought of that question. I appreciate it.
I think he is. Plus, he's red. He's got an odd color for the animal that he is. So I think it counts.
For sure. I totally see. Now I need to see Clifford v. Godzilla. That's got to be the next Godzilla. I know they're coming back with the Godzilla trend. That's got to be the next one.
Yeah, Godzilla is in right now, and I'm psyched to see that because Kong gets to ride on his coattails, and then we get Kong content, which I like to see. And I like Godzilla too.
Of course, that totally fits you.
Yeah, I've got quite a few King Kong figures and posters and stuff out of frame. You guys never get to see them, but there are a lot of them.
That's great.
Anyways, $4.99 from Balthazar 228. Religion clearly harms women. Just look at nuns. It turns them into habitual liars. Wow.
Nice.
It's so interesting that Forrest manages to have his awful influence even when he's not here with these puns.
Oh my god, the puns are the worst. Our chat is so bad.
It's absolutely, it's pathological. You guys need to get yourself checked out.
$10 from Sapphic Bibliophile. Responding to the deportation bullshit, people are spreading the word that if you see ICE in your neighborhood and feel it's relevant, shout La Migra. so people have warning. That's fair.
Good
Most
enough.
of my neighbors are outside partying like every day of the week, so I think they'll see them before I do, but that's fair. Good thing to spread to people, I guess.
$5 from MCP. Once they spin up the prison industrial complex for mass deportation, they will have to move on to some other group to keep up the quarterly profits. Yeah, and it starts with the at least in Germany, right? It starts with the deportations, and then they're deporting too many people, so they have to have a place to put them. And then those places, they decide the deporting is actually just really expensive, because who would have thought? But deporting people is super expensive. You have to like ship them somewhere else, and that has to leave the borders of your country. And that's when they came up with an alternative solution to their problem, that is a very famous and absolutely horrific one. So, again, I hope I'm overreacting. In all likelihood, we are. But it's worth noting.
Yeah, I keep holding on to that our food is, sorry, I just saw that our food is here in the chat from Matt, and I read that because my brain is so on food.
We're like,
I
gotta get
I totally do.
psychic
Yes, I
damage.
think we are overreacting as well, but it's hard to know. $9.99 from Balthazar
Oh, goodness,
228.
yeah, you go
Religion
ahead.
also clearly harms women, as Erika keeps getting baited into multi-hour attempts to fix the unsavable, sitting for lies despite Donnie's clear unavailability to change.
Here's the thing, though. What I've realized with that, after I've had grandstanding accounts where I'm like, I'll never engage with these people again. But what I realized is I'm a broken person, and I have fun having those conversations, and then I can repost them on my channel with additional commentary, and then you guys have fun because you're just as sick as I am, and then I make money off of it, which I get to use to fundraise additional videos that I actually enjoy making, and I got to have a conversation that I enjoyed having, and I get to over time watch watch Donnie continue to just backtrack, and very, very slowly. I don't know if you guys if you've been keeping up with my channel for a very long time, you'll notice there are some things that he accepts now that he did not used to accept. So I count that as a win, because I know that I did that at least one or two of the times. So I'm giving that to
Chipping
myself.
away. Yeah.
Chipping away ever so slowly. $5 from Monkey at Typewriter. Anyone see the science news out of Australia? They found a bigger and more venomous funnel web spider. So if things weren't bad enough this week, poor Australia. I would take your problems over ours right now, though, to be honest. I thought I would like to meet a venomous funnel web spider through plexiglass.
I love all of the animals in Australia. They have such an awesome, like really cool collection of critters that they don't ship out anymore. It's an isolated little ring, so it's everything there is very special and unique.
It's a very, very cool ecosystem.
Absolutely.
Is this you or me?
I think it's me. $5 from Razor Sharp. Should we work on a new way to promote feminism to young men? If so, what are some quick thoughts on that? I don't know how to solve the problem with young men right now. I think we need a lot more voices on the left. I think that the right has such a massive, there are people on the far right, like Trumpian, in every like niche you can imagine, like fitness and food and self-help, and we really need to be as broad with our reach. And I don't know how to fix that problem.
I don't know that this is true, but every time I see a discussion of feminism, it almost, some of them feel astroturfed to me. I don't know that for a fact, but because I feel like I've met, I teach at a university. I meet so many young men as they come through the university system, and overwhelmingly, they're super pleasant and not freakish in any way, right? And I see them have good interactions with the women who are there, and I see everybody having a good time interacting with one another. There's that tension that seems to just permeate the online spaces isn't there. So not to say that it's not a legitimate issue. I'm sure that it is, but I think that the biggest solution is, as far as messaging feminism, is we need to message feminism and intersectional feminism as to what they actually are, instead of what these people think it is. Right? It's not about hating young men or pinning the blame on them. It's about equal opportunity and consideration under the law for everyone, men and women alike. And it's about having cultural expectations for people based off of their sex or gender, removed from society so that you can pursue what it is you want to pursue.
Right.
Whether it's being a parent or pursuing a career or whatever, like that's for everybody. That was feminism's initial goal, and it's still what its goal is, albeit at an intersectional level, which was needed, from the very beginning. But the right, has successfully, in my opinion, managed to demonize even the word, thanks to Gamergate, etc. And I think that sucks. So I think the best way to message feminism is to just say, okay, like, do middle school rules. Do you think that people should have equal opportunity under the law, and in employment opportunities, regardless of their sex or gender? And if the answer is yes, congrats, you're a feminist by the definition of a word. You don't get to change the word and just say that that it's this mean thing that we don't like now, right?
Yeah.
It is what it's always been. And I think we just need to remind people of that.
That is, I think, the most prominent tactic I see on the right is to misrepresent these things and then to convince them that, like, oh, see, you don't want to care about trans people or care about women because this is what that means. And it's like not at all what it means. It is so frustrating. I'm regularly having this conversation with people and it makes me want to pull my hair out.
Well, and it's like when I talk to some of these people, and they're like, well, I just don't like the kind of feminism that, hates men or whatever. And I want to be like, that's not feminism. You're not dealing with feminism. Like, I'm really sorry. You're not dealing with feminism and you're not dealing with intersectional feminism. You're dealing with somebody who, has a bone to pick, or in my opinion, more frequently than I would care to see these days, a bot that is designed to get you to interact with it and be pissed off. I'm literally begging these people, talk to actual women, talk to actual like gay and trans people, talk to actual like Black people. I'm begging you, because everybody's just a person. We're all trying to make it. And some people are assholes, of course, but the fastest way to nip feminism or feminism, to nip sexism or racism or transphobia or homophobia or whatever in the bud, to just meet a person like that, because you'll realize that they're just a person,
Absolutely,
like you. So I don't know. That's how I do it in my life.
$10 from the Raven 200. Demon Slayer, a redheaded boy who can smell good, his demon little sister, a sleeping anxious Pikachu, and an angry Peppa Pig go on a mission to fight demon Michael Jackson by breathing really hard. Yes, I do remember seeing the villain, and he had big Michael Jackson vibes. That is accurate.
What is big Michael Jackson vibes? Like he has like moonwalk. He's got like a hat. He like does
he's got like a white suit and hat kind of thing. Like he looks like it's like the outfit has Michael Jackson vibes. Like, yeah.
No. I was like, wow, what an interesting choice for a villain. $5 from SJL Daximus thinks non-religious turn to crime. I think it's far more likely that criminals turn away from religion. This is the kind of thing I'm talking about, right? Like being able to parse out what it is that we're actually observing here versus the easy correlation that we tend to draw. There's nuance that we have to appreciate.
Yeah, absolutely. $5 from Bobby Keniston. I feel like I'm up on Melancholy Hill with the plastic tree. I'm glad for the show, though. The line is my medicine when it's here with me. We're gonna keep going as long as we can.
I'm not feeling good ink right now. I'm not feeling good ink. Things are not going well.
No, definitely not.
$5 from Crystal B. Came in late, but we'll catch up later. Glad I caught you on the way out. Thanks, Crystal. We're glad to see you.
Thank you so much, Crystal. $9.99 from the Wizard Warlock. I've settled on a pileated gibbon for the funny little hairdo. Is that right? Or pileated?
That's a great choice. Not enough people give pileated gibbons the respect that they deserve. That's a good one. I'm also partial to people who pick Mueller's gibbons or silvery gibbons, because they also don't get enough attention. So they do have funny hairdos, though. Very cute. Simang based choice, but also basic choice. Same with Lord Gibbon. Great, but really rudimentary. $10 for Monkey to Typewriter. Erika really just out here to get the Man in the Yellow Hat canceled. Now I have to tell my kid that one of his favorite cartoons is wrong. This is the Paw Patrol fight all over again. Love you guys. Also, what is Curious George? He's not a chimp, but he lacks it. Is he a Barbary macaque? That's my best bet so far.
I've never had to consider what species Curious George is. I love that.
He's that archetypal monkey that's just like the little brown monkey with the tail that's kind of prehensile, but like not Curious George, but like he's that type where it's like generic monkey that isn't actually a real monkey, but everybody
Right.
uses to depict the monkey. Actually, just like your little PFP there, monkey to typewriter. What species is that monkey?
Right. What? Yeah.
What is he?
I like how you were calling on that and it was right there the whole time.
It was right there. It was here for me.
$10 from One-Eyed Heathen. A thought. Perhaps we should use the sunrise symbol from Man in the High Castle as a resistance symbol. Take your leave as you see fit. Fascism is bound to lose. I don't know the reference. I'm also
It's a pretty
like
good show. Season 1 and 2
Margarita.
are
I'm not doing like a doomer quite yet. I don't think it's gonna be super bad, but I also people keep being like, oh, fascism is bound to lose. Like, you know, they're gonna look back on history and say they're wrong. And I'm like, I get it. Also, you have to remember that like empires fall, genocides happen, like the good guys don't always win. And
yeah, and there is no in the long run, right? That's what we were talking about earlier. History keeps trucking. It is time's a flat circle. You know, it's the yin and yang. Evil's on top for a little while, good's on top for a little while. To moralize it and oversimplify it, because no people are truly all evil or all good.
Sure.
At least very few are. But you know, the good guys and the bad guys, they just swap places because on a long enough time scale, maybe that shit does hash out to 50-50. But you know, there is no cementing it permanently, I don't think, because people are people. We're the true neutral on the D&D alignment scale. Anything could happen.
True.
$5, 5 pounds, I mean, from the Fuzzy Logic. Speaking of voices on the left, I'm thinking of starting up a channel to combat misconceptions about socialism in the left. Any advice? Make sure that whatever you're doing, you enjoy it. The second it feels like a chore or like a job, your audience will know and your content will start sucking. So just make sure you enjoy what you're doing and what you're talking about.
Yeah, I feel that. And I also think there's an element of just do it, just like ship a video. Like I'm the kind of person who can endlessly tweak and fix and like wants to get everything right or like correct my mistakes or like double check everything. And I think that can sometimes be a hindrance and that it's kind of better to put something out there. And if you make a mistake, the next time do it better. But like, or it's like the pot maker analogy, you know, like somebody can study how to make the perfect pot, but the person who makes 1,000 pots but doesn't ever study is probably going to make a better pot at the end of the day, right? Because you've got that experience of actually doing it. Yeah. And then our final super chat of the day, $10 from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Now that Clifford is a kaiju, what do you think his superpower is? And how would he fare in a fight against King Kong? Please spare no detail. I bet that Chinese food sounds real good right now, Arden. Thanks, Eric.
Clearly Clifford has only two options. Either he has fire-based powers on the basis that he is red, or
Correct.
he has sonic-based powers on the basis that he is a dog, and dogs woof and bark. Now, as for how he would fare with King Kong, it totally depends on whether or not we're looking at Kong from Monsterverse, where he's armed with a big radioactive axe, or old-fashioned King Kong, who is much smaller and basically just a large gorilla. If it is the latter, Clifford stands a much better chance because we're talking about superpowered Clifford. If it's the former, it's a much more even match, in my opinion.
I see. I'm thinking Clifford's got to have like like I guess it wouldn't be a werewolf because he's already a dog, but I want him to enter like feral mode. You know, like his fangs get bigger and then he's bigger and stronger.
Yeah,
or gets
it's
all
like
afraid, so he looks mad and angry.
You remember the Bowser Ultimate Smash from Brawl, where he turns into just like a bigger, angrier looking Bowser? That's his final smash. That's what I'm picturing for Clifford.
Yep. All right, everybody. Before another super chat can get in, we're gonna put a button on it. Thank you guys so much for being here. We really appreciate it. Thank you to Dragon for call screening, and thank you to all the callers and viewers. We really appreciate your guys' participation. The Line has a podcast, and join our Patreon. You know, if you want to get your name on that list.
We fight because we must, everybody. Let's fight another day, and we'll see you next time.
We will get there. Also, grind don't stop, as the song says.
Yeah. Do it for the love of the game, too. Just be out there fighting because you like it.
All right, everybody. Have a good week.